Welcome back to the home studio and welcome to episode 19 of the Stevie Richards Show. In today's episode, we're going to talk about what it takes to become a professional wrestling superstar. We've been workshopping the title for about, 45 minutes, but I haven't been doing it alone. I have my co-host and my friend and the boss here at the Stevie Richards Show, James.
The boss, you say?
Yeah. Yeah, you're running.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take it. If you El Jefe, I'd prefer though, if nothing else. Just a bit more of a Latin flavour. Hello, I'm James. Anyway, we'll do the plugs quite quickly. I want to mention why I picked this is because I sort of make up the formats the morning of.
You just proved you're the boss.
Why?
You said the reason why I picked this.
I did pick it. In fairness,
you did, and it's a great subject.
Do you know? It's weird because I just thought I woke up this morning and think, damn. I've given this no thought. And then, anyway, it all came together quite quickly, including you came up with a really good segue from our news stuff into what we're talking about today. As you say, it is becoming a superstar. And we're not talking about the wrestling aspects. We're talking about the appearance of being a superstar. We're going to be talking about the old school bodies of pro wrestlers and how they achieved it. We're going to be talking about the clothing. We're going to be talking about what height you're going to bill yourself as, all that kind of stuff as well. We're going to be also be talking about a couple of news stories. We've got a couple of what went wrong segments as well. But before we get into all of that, of course, we have the plugs to do. I've got 2 books. Don't worry about them. Oh, yeah, in fact, no. One on Owen Hart, one on The Rock. It's coming up to Christmas, for God's sake. Treat yourself. They're great books, damn it. Fine biographies, what I wrote to myself. Stevie has YouTube channels galore as well he wants to tell you about. He has the fitness channel that's doing well. The sauna video did incredibly well, it turns out, that he was telling me in the pre-show. He also has the wrestling analysis channel, which might be making a comeback quite soon in a maybe slightly different form. Steve's been bouncing some ideas around as well. And, of course, most importantly, the Patreon as well.
Yeah, and Patreon got a look into the pre-show, and after we're done into the post-show, there's exclusive content. We share the show notes and other assets throughout the week as I'm trying to build out, I guess, NORAD, our command center right here. People get a sneak peek into that. And also a monthly...
Oh, you're in mission control. I know you're a trekker, but honestly, you are Luke Picard.
It's like a star base. How's that?
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to build. And there was a point when I lived in Connecticut, when I worked in WWE, I lived in Connecticut, and they never used me at the office. So hey, with the recent news coming out, it was probably a blessing in disguise that I didn't spend too much time at Titan Towers. But I actually was going to turn my living room, and I was obviously single, into the bridge of the Starship Enterprise from the Next Generation. Also, I almost, this would have been the stupidest, but also most awesome purchase I ever made. I used to go out to the Star Trek Experience, which is no longer a thing, out in Las Vegas. They had the Star Trek Experience at the Las Vegas Hilton. Everybody else always stayed. This is a theme, just like going into the boxes, the luxury boxes, and hiding. I would stay at the Las Vegas Hilton. Everybody else would stay somewhere else. And I would actually just take in the start. That was my Disneyland or my Disney World. I would go there all the time, every time we had a house show or a TV or a pay-per-view in Vegas. And one time, I was actually part of a Star Trek wedding on the bridge of the Enterprise. They'd say, hey, you want to come in and stand in on the picture? Yeah. I used to go to Quark's Bar and eat and do stuff. It was awesome.
Did they give you like a Klingon outfit or something?
No, I just stood there. I mean, pretty much wore what I wear now. Might be the same exact tank top. Who knows? But that's a little bit of an Easter egg for everybody out there. I am, once again, my buddy Brandon. There it is. My Star Trek mug, original series. And that's kind of my fall asleep stuff. We talked about some of these space shows and astronomy shows. Mostly AI driven now. They're kind of spamming the entire YouTube. And a lot of people are reaching out about that. But yeah, I mean, that was really, I didn't look much like a superstar. See a segue. I didn't look much like a superstar in a Star Trek wedding, but that was my way of breaking away from the mold.
I do appreciate the segue, though. We're going to be talking about a couple of bits of news that have come out in the last couple of days, and they both relate to social media outrage, quotation marks, by basically people who don't matter. So, I want to alert you to Samantha Irvin. She was the ring announcer who almost made a name for herself, really, at WrestleMania this year by getting very emotional when she announced Cody Rhodes being the new WWE champion. And since then, she's garnered a lot of praise from all corners of, podcasts and wrestling media and all that kind of thing for just being very, very good at a job, really putting 100% into it. Now, why I mention this is because her fiancé, a few months ago, Ricochet, essentially he felt he was being underutilized by WWE, and he decided to make a multi-million-dollar deal to jump to AEW, where he would really, for the most part, be working less, and then when he was working, he would be getting more ring time as well. People were up in arms about Samantha, probably about Ricochet leaving, actually, but especially about Samantha Irvin leaving. And this is going to be picking on WWE and AEW crybabies. Now bombarding, this isn't AEW, this is WWE, bombarding Samantha Irvin, her real name Samantha Johnson, for leaving WWE because she had aspirations beyond being a ring announcer. So she said, I quote, "I wanted to manage, maybe even become a general manager one day, but WWE saw no future for me besides announcer. I love watching the action, but I don't love being an announcer." Now she's said she's not going back to AEW. She is going to pursue one of her first loves, which is singing. She was on America's Got Talent as one of the finalists, or at least she was on the show at one point. And one of her early passions is singing, that she's going to make a go of it. But for some reason, this has just offended so many WWE diehards that she would dare leave a job for a passion.
This is another theme when we talked about the Rhea Ripley thing and going back at people on social media. You told me that Samantha is retweeting. That's what Disco does, right, on Twitter sometimes, Disco Inferno. He'll retweet the hate tweets that he gets. So she's doing that. I don't know. It sounds like this girl is super busy. She wants to, reactivate her singing career after years and years in WWE. And I, for one, if Tony Khan is throwing some sick money at you, some stupid money at you, and allow you to sing and pursue your singing career, and you get to be with your fiance, it's a win-win. I don't see her not going to AEW. I see that being a very flexible schedule. And dare I say it, if she was on America's Got Talent, and I didn't even know that because WWE never promoted or pushed this mainstream crossover talent that got signed by WWE. So they didn't capitalize on it. If Tony Khan and AEW can do that, and also Tony Khan and his dad probably have connections within the music industry. So I think politically it will probably serve her really well to get paid while also using AEW, Tony Khan, and the connections to become a big singer. Because if she becomes a big music superstar, it only helps AEW. Gives them more mainstream publicity. So I would say she's only talking about never jumping, but I think all the cards would line up, the money would line up, and her personal life doesn't suffer because she doesn't have to miss her fiance to get to spend time on the road together. Or maybe that could be a bad thing. Who knows? You are growing your hair out to piss your wife off. You told me that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Why not? Keeps it spicy.
What if you and your wife got signed by AEW and you had to be on the road together 24/7? How would that go?
Awful. Absolutely awful. Be at each other's throats. I tell you, since I was off for a few weeks, oh God, we could strangle each other. I think we've got a more combative relationship, me and my wife, than most. All we do is give each other grief. But it's weirdly, there was actually a study not too long ago. Do you watch The
Notebook and say, this looks like a documentary?
I've never seen The Notebook.
Oh, okay.
So I'll presume you're right on that. But no, there's a study recently that said couples who insult each other or just make fun of each other and just aren't gooey over each other all the time are more likely to stay married, weirdly.
Well, my wife goofs on good Lord, she gooses me too. I like that. She goofs on me all the time because I am a silly person. But I don't know if we insult each other and go that far or anything.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, imagine how boring life would be if you were just all polite to each other 24/7.
Now, once in a while, she'll ask me to run across the street or something because I run like Steven Seagal, so I'm pretty awful.
Hands down.
If there's not ropes like 16 to 20 feet apart, I can go about 16 feet in that direction or 8 feet, and I got to bounce off. But if I go beyond that, it's
Oh, Stevie Richards' wife. If you hear this, can you please film Stevie running?
we may try slow mo like John Worthy and Never Lie to Me or Never Lie to You. The slow mo makes everybody look cool. We'll see if it does it.
Hoff, the Hoff.
Hasselhoff,
Damn.
the Baywatch run. You're right.
Oh, yeah.
And we have a beach near us. I might have to try that. But back to the serious matter of Samantha Irvin versus social media. We talked about the Rhea Ripley stuff, and you talked about a little bit dealing with some Twitter nonsense and stuff. I haven't been on social media in probably 6 weeks. Forgot I even had it until you brought this story up. When does it become the risk versus the reward of even being on social media or interacting on social media to this degree? Doesn't it hurt more her brand than, it helps the trolls in a way? Can't quite explain it right, but it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I definitely think that humanity has proved that they cannot handle having a voice on the internet for the most part. Let me give you some. I'm actually going to. You can't see this, Stevie, but the people can on my camera. Samantha is actually taking on the trolls head on, basically either telling them off for being idiots or retweeting some of the crap that they're. Here we go. All hate aside, you do sound extremely ungrateful for the opportunities you were given then to brag about your mediocre wrestler husband's bank balance was trashy. You'd better hope WWE takes your husband back after AEW and TNA finish using him poorly. Another one. Go to AEW, get paid that money to be in front of no one, you slut. That's someone pretending to be a girl, I guess, or an actual girl. You are pathetic and ungrateful, retweeting stuff, bad-mouthing the WWE Universe. Triple H allowed you to make millions of dollars and meet that midget inbred you call a man Ricochet. You are beyond pathetic, and you realise that weak wimp couldn't protect you from the WWE Universe. A couple more. You need to get yourself tested for mental issues. Wow, you're a loser. Just more stuff about it. It's weird people have a problem with Ricochet having matches and his girlfriend being proud. What a weird world. Oh, that's actually a nice one. But it's why do people hold a torch for these billionaire companies who see you as you said before, you're an NCP, you're a customer,
NPC, non-player character.
NPC, yeah, you're a non-playable character. Why do these people, who I swear have no lives, they cannot have lives, or they're just like purposely being trolls? Like, why do they hold the torch for these billionaire companies who see you as nothing but a customer? It's like the gaming wars. It's like Xbox and PlayStation. Well, they're both games, and just like what you like. I don't understand this hatred for someone leaving a company to go and do something else. Why do they feel personally betrayed by this?
Well, I mean, it's a tale as old as time. Tribalism. You want your team to win. We're going through an election right now. We're a week away at the time, less than a week away at the time of this recording. It's tribalism. You want your team to win. Everybody takes a very personal approach to what they like, and if you don't like what they like, or you don't hate what they hate, they turn on you. It's a situation sometimes people eat each other. They eat themselves as they do it. I would say the blame falls on both ends. In other words, Samantha Irvin did not even need to put this out on social media. She just needed to focus on her brand, her business, her future, all those different things. Or just make it a one-way conversation. If you want to use Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever social media, or even YouTube as a promotional tool to do what you need to do as a business and a brand, that's fine. We live in a world, we live in a society, and I don't know how long it's been this. I don't know if this is a tale as old as time. The tribalism is definitely something that's ingrained in society. Every human being, no matter what country, no matter what you like or dislike, sports, media, movies, entertainment, pro wrestling, this show, technology, iOS, Android, all that stuff you're always going to have picking sides going on. I like this iPhone, therefore Android is garbage. You know, you have to justify.
I mean, you're right.
I am right.
You're absolutely right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Android fans, for subscribing. So Patreon, you don't get charged the 30% upcharge like iOS. So Android's better when it comes to Patreon. But that's all it is. Now, there's another effect, too. It's the boiling pot with the frogs or the crabs or whatever in it. People instinctively, for some reason, rather than trying to lift themselves out of the boiling pot to not boil anymore, they see someone else escaping. What do? I got to pull you back in so you suffer with me in misery. I wish people, because it's an amazing feeling, doing what we do every day of the week, trying to build a brand, build a business, build a show. I love producing content. I love editing. I love learning at 53 years old. And learning means also what we talked about on the pre-show. When I learn from you, when I learn from Chris, when I learn from my wife or anybody else, I'm learning something, say SEO, thumbnails, titles, whatever it might be. I go to you because you know more than me. You have a better success rate using those elements with your YouTube channel. When I was wrestling and before I was wrestling, I seeked people out that were successful in the business, that were higher on the card, that were booked more, that were having better matches, that were better wrestlers, that could convert sales, the fitness industry. I consulted with YouTube channels and influencers or people at affiliate businesses and said, can you share any secrets or any information of how you do this? Because they were more successful. And I still do that. Instead of saying, somebody's doing really good work. Let me see if I can drag them back down. It's based on jealousy. It's based on insecurity. And I wish, instead of saying they don't deserve to have a voice, they don't deserve to have this or that, they don't deserve to have any platform, I would ask those people, or actually challenge them and borderline beg them, please, find your passion. Find what makes you feel alive, what makes you want to wake up in the morning, motivates you, inspires you, and focus on that. And try to be the best person you can with that. It's always going to be that way. I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan, so obviously someone gets traded to the Dallas Cowboys, my inner child of being an Eagles fan is pissed off. But that's the basis of our core tribalism beliefs. You're laughing. What are you going to say?
Hey, no, well, I've written that down. You're a Philly Eagles fan. You're a Star Trek fan. But, like, let's say, okay, Scott Bakula, yeah, I know he's in one of the later Star Treks, drops that and goes to The Mandalorian. It's like, how dare you go from one franchise to another? Is this fairly unique, the level of vitriol? Because it just seems that the stakes are so low as well. It's like she's not even moving to AEW.
It doesn't matter. Yes, it's absolutely the same exact thing. And it's
like when the stakes are lower, it gets more vitriol. That's what, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but pro wrestling, here's the thing about pro wrestling. Now, football, American football, European football, baseball, whatever, I think it caps off a little bit for some reason because the sports teams, and even in football, most of the people don't know the faces of the football players. They know their numbers, they know their name on the back, they know the positions, and they confused it even more because now you have wide receivers with number 8. It used to be kind of sectioned off per position. So that's just a little Easter egg for that. I don't like that. I wish they would have kept the numbers the way they did. But pro wrestling, what's its greatest strength, what keeps the lifeblood and the heartbeat of every pro wrestling company, it like growing and beating and keeps it alive, is that raw emotion of the wrestling fans. Which, dare I say it, back in the day when they believed it was real, imagine if they had social media then, they'd want to kill people. They legitimately wanted to kill the wrestlers, the heel wrestlers in Memphis and, New Jack and Smoky Mountain Wrestling. They legitimately wanted to murder some of these guys. Imagine if social media and New Jack was like, here I am at the Perkins and I'm checking in. They're like, oh, okay. It would actually be worse than it is now. They're really it's just words over an internet connection. When it gets dangerous is when it gets to the Sonya Deville and that kind of stuff. That's where, in wrestling fans, That's the other part of the double-edged sword. The greatest strength is eliciting raw emotions, energy, love, hate, the most powerful emotions, even jealousy. All three of those. Now you go to the other end of the double-edged sword, and now they want to type, they want to come at you. You give them access through Twitter, social media, and then sometimes, and hopefully not very many, it morphs and it grows and it festers into a Sonya Deville situation. And they can tweet at her all day long. I just hope somebody isn't that mad at her where they're going to be waiting for her or go somewhere she's going to be. That's when it becomes pretty scary.
On the flip side of things, we've also got WWE ID, if I can say it properly. Now, this was announced yesterday. I'm going to get the... in fact, I can just switch it on the screen record as well. There we go. How good. October 29th, 2024, WWE today announced the launch of a first-of-its-kind development program designed to provide provide up-and-coming independent wrestlers a pathway to a potential career in WWE. The program will be called WWE ID, short for WWE Independent Development. I won't bore you with any more of the details, except to say that they're going to be working with certain people that are in good standing with WWE. Currently, you also have wrestling schools like Booker T's Reality of Wrestling, Cody Rhodes' Nightmare Factory, Seth Rollins' Black and Brave Academy, Elite Pro Wrestling Training, which I believe is Rikishi's. I've never heard of Knox Pro Academy in Los Angeles. I've never heard that one. I don't think it's got a famous pro wrestler attached to that one. But no, was that? I'm sorry, that's Rikishi. But there's Elite Pro Wrestling Training, which isn't attached to in New Hampshire. New Hampshire, it must be. As well, and essentially they're going to be looking at certain prospects. They're going to be providing some money, essentially some financial means to keep people in the business and carry on with the independent wrestling. Now, we can also talk about the outrage of AEW fans about WWE somehow monopolizing the independent wrestling scene somehow. Not that they haven't done that for years in various forms with NXTs that they were going to have across the world and so on and so forth. We'll talk about AEW in a minute, but you had some opinions on WWE working with certain schools and what you think it means for independent wrestlers, whether it's a good or bad thing.
If you want to use the term outrage, I believe the biggest outrage, at least in my opinion, is that the one promotion that actually has TV pay-per-views is run as close to a WWE-style business on an independent level is OVW. And OVW was the official, farm league. Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton, John Cena, John Morrison, Joey Mercury. The list goes on and on of people. When Cornette had it originally, then Danny Davis. Now Al Snow has it. But Al Snow also at the same time goes on Vince Russo's show and is very honest and gives honest criticism about the flaws and the shortcomings of the business, and he breaks it down by company, including WWE. That is probably the number one reason that Al and OVW are not on this list, where I think OVW is still training the future wrestlers. I say wrestlers and workers as one, because all different styles, different storylines, live fire with TV and pay-per-views, house shows, all these infrastructure items that are in OVW, that most of these will need WWE to build out, much like FCW and the beginning of NXT. So I don't know. I mean, I want everybody to be successful. But what I see here is, for lack of a better metaphor, a bubble within a bubble, an independent WWE bubble within the WWE bubble. So what are you doing? Is it just going to be more NXT cookie cutter wrestlers, but they're just at a different wrestling school? Then you also have NXT moving to Vegas, right? Or the Performance Center. So that's...
It's suggested there could be two NXTs. We don't know at this point.
Well, how did that work out last time with multiple NXTs?
It did. I think they're going to be using UFC's Apex Center,
yeah.
Are they? Or moving it near
That's what I mean. They already have TKO, UFC, everybody under one umbrella, so why not bring... Then you can train UFC wrestlers to be pro wrestlers, or back and forth if that's what you want to do from a brand, or even have hybrid type things, which I pitched a long time ago about having hybrid matches and fights on WrestleMania just to bring it all together.
But I don't think it's all doom and gloom as far as, homogenizing and whatnot, because obviously independent wrestlers, I doubt, are just going to go straight from the schools to NXT. I think they're going to be funding independent wrestlers in their journey, or at least, like a stipend or something like that. Keep at it, we're watching you, watching your progress. It's almost like the WWE's NIL program, excuse me, for, athletes in college, almost like, a little stipend, we're watching you. You could be on the fast track, we see something in you. I don't see anything wrong with that at all. And quite frankly, I don't know why someone like AEW, who has the means, and even more than WWE, should be doing this, because especially when they opened, they had a lot of young wrestlers with not that much experience that really could have used the extra reps. And apart from Cody Rhodes, where they had the Nightmare Factory for a while. I think that's why he started
it, though. I think that was supposed to be the developmental league. They had QT training. He showed up. And there was a lot of people from that were doing dark and elevation, which I think hurt those kids too much too soon to get on AEW TV at any exposure. When I was starting out in 91, and then when I had the match in the first ECW match in 92, then when they were getting TV, even was local TV, I was like, I look like crap, I work like crap, I do not want to be seen like this. I have to go out into the desert and then hopefully come back to something. When it's too much Tuesday, you never have wrestling you can repackage, but essentially in this day and age, people don't repackage too much into completely different gimmicks. So when you debut, that's your only chance to make that first impression. And it's very, very negative most times if you're not ready for it.
I was going to give some examples of what AEW could do. They could work with a GCW or Black Label Pro or Defy or PWG or anyone like that and have like a more formal working relationship other than just have like big independents book AEW wrestlers as and when. I'm sure there's a lot of guys and girls on that roster who could do with extra reps if they want them, because obviously there's also the risk you run of getting yourself injured and then Tony Khan just pretends you don't exist until you come back again. So it's out of sight, out of mind, and you run a big risk, even though you may be cashing in those checks. And also with Penta and Phoenix, Tony Khan isn't afraid to exercise the injury clause as well to extend your contract.
Oh, he does that now,
so you
too?
Could be. Yeah, it was either Penta and Phoenix were meant to be debuting with WWE fairly soon, but one of them, I can't remember which one, got injured for like nearly a year, and Tony Khan has extended their contracts for the full length.
Wow.
And he's just going to keep them off TV most likely, so out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, they definitely, I don't think they're going to get to a point where they're going to bring it under control and have that hierarchy and that infrastructure that you just talked about. I think it's just Tony, they dream booking, and that's it. I talked with a WWE guy that had left and he's back there now, and he said he had a storyline, he had all this stuff he pitched to Tony about possibly coming in, and Tony just wanted to see him wrestle in a match that he always wanted to see. That was it. He's like, well, why would it come in just for one man? And this person was putting the other person over. No signing, no contract, no nothing. I think there was a contract somewhere talked about, but my God, like, why are you give a 6-month or 1 year thing that makes sense and doesn't make you world champion or anything, but it was a pretty good storyline that he told me about. And Tony listened and then said, yeah, but I want to just bring in and have this dream match that I always wanted to see. That's the problem. There's no long-term booking. There's no short-term booking. So how can you, it would almost be a death knell to any independent wrestler. And I'm sorry, I'm just being honest. For any independent wrestler, anybody who was just starting out to go into an AEW developmental territory and learn completely the wrong way, and then maybe you're good enough to have WWE sign you to NXT, and your wires are all twisted and crossed. Now you got to get heat and get rebroken in the correct way. That's a nightmare scenario. I want to bring up a point. Let me know what you think. Because a little bit of backstory. I asked for my release on the night of December to Dismember. Remember the pay-per-view that ended like 18 minutes early? I had a dark match with Rene Dupree, which I was very upset that you couldn't put Rene and I on first match, and it ended 18 minutes early. So I asked for my release, and I remember Johnny Ace sitting there, and he said, don't leave. And I was like, okay. This is when we renegotiated the deal a little bit at the beginning about owning my own name with the addendum there. But he said, we want to open up a developmental territory in Stamford, Connecticut. We're going to have you run it. You live in Connecticut, want you to run it. I think it'd be great. We have Dreamer come in. He's local. He had the whole thing, and he was showing me papers that it looked like, oh, this is going to happen sometime down the line. Not today, not tomorrow. My number one question for Johnny was, because he said, oh, we're going to pay him like whatever per week or stipend, like you said. I was like, that's not enough for like 4 people to all live in the same house together in Stamford, Connecticut. Super expensive. So when you're talking about all these different schools and different things happening, say it's a school in Los Angeles, how much are you going to pay them there as opposed to Vegas, as opposed to Florida, as opposed to Georgia, where the Nightmare Factory? Do you see the local economy and the cost of living could create a stress on somebody? Say you want to move somebody from Georgia. It's not cheap, but it's relatively inexpensive compared to Los Angeles. Now, what are you going to do with that person's pay? If you're giving them $500 or $1,000 a week, it could go somewhat far in Georgia, depending upon where you put the school. It isn't going to go anywhere in Los Angeles. Do you see the problem there? Unless you pay for housing, you subsidize that. They don't have bills. You run it kind of like Tough Enough or Ultimate Fighter. Maybe they do come out with a reality series. That would be a smart move.
With that being said, with the subsidies and stuff, WWE's been doing this since at least the 90s. With independent wrestlers, I mean, Edge and Christian, they gave little subsidies to, while they just kept wrestling on the independents. Hey, we don't have something for you today, but just keep at it. We're keeping an eye on you. Even Mark Henry, they subsidized him through the Olympics. The Rock, they gave a bit of money to weekly. Just to keep at it.
They gave the money to
watching
Flex
you
Cabana.
see big things.
Flex Cabana, not
Flex Cabana, I'm sorry.
Ha ha.
God, that's a stupid name.
Ha. Got it.
Yeah, Flex Cabana, goodness me. Anyway, I think there's a story where he actually told Jerry Lawler his name, and Jerry was like, what? Anyway, they went with it. That being said, we're also talking about the social media. So if we sort of dealt with it with the Samantha Irvin portion, but it's just now the AEW fans are now up in arms crying about WWE monopolising it. They're not, clearly. But similarly, is this now going to affect maybe the chances of independent wrestlers who are not in that farm system to be brought into NXT? Because Triple H, keep in mind, is obviously far more open-minded than Vince McMahon was, because he was the one who instituted the NIL. Maybe John Laurinaitis did. Trolling
John
for his next
did the
victim in the
NIL
colleges.
for the Victoria's Secret catalog. That was
yes, absolutely. I was going to say, Laurinaitis, they're now divorcing Laurinaitis, probably trolling for his next victim in colleges. But what's the difference? Is it now going to be a problem where you're only going to be looked at by WWE if you went to one of these 5 schools now?
It would. I mean, it's perfectly logical. You're obviously going to have more of a look at that, especially tape-wise. And I wouldn't doubt the Performance Center is completely mic'd up, cameras everywhere. It's completely bugged. It is literally like Big Brother watching. So they are probably going to have cameras and microphones on all these schools, and they'll be able to look at a practice, look at a training session, look at promos. And obviously, now that all the media is digitized, they're probably going to put it up on a hard drive, on a NAS. Then they can look at everything from Stanford, Florida, wherever they're at, and do that. I mean, why wouldn't they? I mean, if you're subsidizing and paying, and you're obviously going to pay the schools a certain amount each year, if you're subsidizing that, trying to get the entire developmental system so you constantly have talent coming in, not just from Florida, but now everywhere, of course they're going to have favored status over just whoever from, who doesn't have that. Now, I would say, what if this is where I said before, what if AEW decides to copy this, have a developmental territory or multiple ones? Now, will WWE hire somebody that's an AEW trained product because it might not and it probably won't fit in line with the way WWE wants their wrestlers to work? And will AEW now not hire people that have been trained but not on TV, say? So, obviously if they're on TV, got to push, Tony will hire them. But what if it's somebody, you see, now you're black. It's like a two-way blacklist going on potentially. Do you see that happening? I do. We just talked about the fans, the boiling pot, dragging people down. Nobody's going to say, well, that person, that's Tony Khan's favorite, but you know what? They're a really good person and they're a really good worker. And I can look past all that. Not a whole lot of people, maybe Triple H, because he has done that in the past.
I mean, ultimately, do you think WWE ID is a good or bad thing?
I think they need to get the NXT infrastructure right. I think there's way too many misses and not enough hits coming out of NXT. In other words, you don't have the workflow, the standard operating procedure to make a superstar in the performance center you currently have with the NXT model. Think about how many people wash out and then they're done. And then you replace them with somebody that eerily looks and works exactly like that. So great from a, profit loss margin, that the income ratio, all that stuff, but maybe not so great of, you're never going to, this is the thing too. There's very few Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn's, Killer Cross, other people that really cut their teeth on the true indies. And that's another thing too. On the indies, you're allowed to kind of experiment a lot. You're allowed to fail. You're allowed to try things. But now you're going to get in the back of your mind and in the front of your mind, because you're going to be right. Who's writing a report? Who's watching me? Who's doing this and that? So now you're self-censoring your own creativity to take a chance. I think it's going to overall be, in a way, worse. Now, will a lot of people get work? Will a lot of people make money, at least some money, and maybe make a living? Hopefully. But you may have also a lot of talent, and this has been the case for a lot of people. You see EC3 and a lot of people that got signed early on and really had an uphill battle after getting released from NXT Performance Center, whatever it might be. And then he got released again when he came back as EC3. They didn't do anything with him because he was a TNA property. So he couldn't get past that back then. It's different now. But
I was going to say Joe Hendry.
Yeah, Joe Henry, another thing. But is Joe Hendry under a full-time? There's sort of that. I think that pissed Tony Khan, Khan, not C-O-N, sorry. I think it pissed Tony Khan off because Triple H did the Forbidden Door better than Tony Khan did. And still continues to do that. Now, it's lost a little bit of the bloom is off the rose, as Vince McMahon would say. They haven't done anything with Joe Hendry and other people, but they, on the offset of it, they did a much better job with that than Tony did.
Okay, so we're going to helpfully segue, because you told me to segue like this in the pre-production meeting. It was very, very well done of you. Is talking about becoming superstars, prospective superstar wrestlers. How do you get to the big leagues? And by big leagues, I mean WWE, essentially. And when you broke in back in 1991, there were a few things you needed. You needed the flashy gear, you needed the body, you needed to be a certain size. But we're going to be talking about the body first. And as a fitness enthusiast who has evolved throughout the decades, with the latest gym equipment and theories of how to build your body for longevity and also aesthetics. But back in the day, when obviously you were watching wrestling back in the 80s, you would see bodies that are a lot different to what you see now, what pro wrestlers back in the day aspired to look like. So give us an example of somebody and some of the things that a pro wrestler back in the 80s would have that you aspired to look like, or that you were impressed by, that we don't see as much of today.
Well, that's a very full-featured question. Hopefully I can give a full-featured answer. No, it's just I had enough sense growing up when I decided I want to be a pro wrestler. You know, when I was 15 years old and someone said to me, "You'll never be a pro wrestler, Michael Manna. You're just a nerd. You're just a," and I still am at 53. But that's exactly where I'll show you, you'll see. I said that right back to the person in the high school hallway, and that's why I used it in my thing. So it was like kind of like a huge callback there. So you need to find your purpose and what you want to be in the business. That can always change. So you're going to look and dream big and say, I want to be WWE champion. This is what I want to be. I hope to work this person one day. And that could become true. There's a lot of people in the business now that grew up watching the people that are working on TV right now. It's really a great way for your dream to come true. So you got to kind of put that out there. Now, as far as how you will look, this is where you need to be realistic. Now, at 15, probably had a lot of growing to do. I grew a few more inches, and it took me about 10 years to even put some weight on. So you have to look at who really can identify with you. And this goes back to the last episode where I said, pick a mentor that's kind of within your move set, your look, and how you would realistically work in the ring. So the body stuff, I would look at, even back then when I was a kid, I would look more at the Ric Flairs, the Barry Windhams, Shawn Michaels, Marty Jannetty. Now, there was a mix between in the 80s when I got into into the idea of getting into the business and finally did it in 91. In the 80s, you had your WWF Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, big bodybuilders, Warlord, Barbarian, all these big, larger-than-life people. But then when you looked at AWA, see, I did it right that time, NWA that morphed into WCW, you had your Dutch Mantels. Let's go Memphis, Jerry Lawler, Doug Summers, Buddy Rose. You had a whole range of different kinds of workers. But as a young person, you don't want to say, hey, I'm extremely overweight, so I'm going to work like Buddy Rose. Because you can work out, lose weight, put muscle on. As a matter of fact, I believe Ric Flair was over 300 pounds with dark hair. He called himself Rambling Rick Rhodes. He wanted to be...
Rambling Ricky Rhodes, yeah. He was a Dusty Rhodes ripoff.
And look at what he became. And he's a cardio freak. He's a fitness fanatic. He turned that around after he started wrestling. So I would tell young wrestlers, identify more with who you want to look like and see if you can achieve that. Because even if you get halfway to 3/4 there, that's a great amount of progress. And if you're overweight and you're kind of big or whatever, aspire to be the best big man, maybe. If you're saying, I'm not going to lose the weight, so I'm going to go into, powerlifting, strong 5x5, Wendler 531, which we're going to get to the workouts. I still recommend a strength program or a power program for young people because there's a lot of, lower body strength that goes into wrestling. People might not think it because people are jumping or whatever. Still a great deal of explosive power, lower body strength that really is important in pro wrestling. But I would say really look at who you realistically could be and also dreaming about who you want to be and then kind of figure out what the happy medium is.
I'm going to give you a couple of examples of names. The one I wrote down, Greg Valentine. Now, that is a body of a stocky, old-school pro wrestler that is typical. Is for the 80s, especially the 80s era. Not like Ultimate Warrior, I'm saying, but, across the board, he had a fairly typical body of big, thick. You knew he was strong, you knew he was muscular, you knew he was a tough guy, but not a bodybuilder. The physical aspects of a body like Greg or someone like that, what are you looking out for? Is it arms, chest, legs? What typifies a body of that era for you?
Well, I would say more of your standard, like 4 major lifts: bench press, deadlift, squat, overhead press. I look at Greg Valentine and I'm saying, well, this guy could have been a power lifter before he got in. He had a Ken Patera type of body, very thick. And that was a lot of guys. Some guys didn't even work out. The wrestling schools, and that's what we'll get to at the school. I said lower body strength. If you go to a wrestling school, I don't know if they do it now, you're doing Hindu squats all day long. You're running, you're doing Hindu squats. You're doing all sorts of different calisthenics before you even get in the ring to train. So normally we would do 500 Hindu squats, which maybe that's why I hate squatting of any sort. You know, it's too much PTSD for me. But Hindu squats, doing that kind of stuff, you know, that's like you can get in incredible shape. Big Vito, you know, from the ECW and also WWE, he's got to be in his 50s, maybe even like right touching 60. He does all calisthenics out in the Florida sun, squats, push-ups, different kinds of isometrics, things like that. So there's a lot of different foundational training things that you need to do. And I would dare say, if you have the money, as somebody getting into the business, hire a personal trainer for like 3 months, 6 months to get you where you need to be more efficiently. Don't just kind of guess, this is what I'm going to do. This, have somebody train you properly to get ready for that, because they'll know more, and also they'll be able to protect you from injury before you even get into the business. But getting back to Greg Valentine, there's a lot of guys that never even worked out. That was just their body. I mean, his dad had the same exact body that Greg had. So I don't know how much Greg could have just went in, did like 5-minute warm up on the treadmill, did like the Ron Simmons, just do some curls and leave the gym. Ron didn't work out much. I mean, he did when he played football, but he was very light. He just genetically, he was a freak. And I think Greg Valentine also, genetically to an extent, was just naturally that big, thick, kind of like a wrestling dinosaur type thing. Not from an age perspective, but literally just a mountain of a man that could work.
It's funny, you know, Morocco told me that Jimmy Snooker didn't really work out that much either. And he had the body of all bodies back in, you know, the 70s as well. Talk about, you hinted at it before, you know, the 4 major lifts, Hindu squats, that kind of thing. What other weight lifts or exercises would the old school wrestlers maybe tell you or do themselves to get their bodies bigger?
Oh, they would say steroids.
apart from the chemical enhancements.
But you're asking what they would tell me, and that would be it. No, most guys that will work out, I would watch people. I'd watch Triple H work out in the gym if we ever crossed paths to some extent. I travel with Glenn, so I watched what he did. You get to a certain point, and it's going to be different. Just like in your teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, and now in my 50s, your workouts always evolve. They always pivot. They always shift. They always adapt. And I think it's the same way, like when you're getting into wrestling, talking about wrestling school, when you start working, and then when you're a full-time worker, it changes dramatically. This is what I would say. If I was, old wrestlers never did this, but I started to do it too late. But if you're getting into the business, start doing the prehab, start doing the rehab, start doing yoga, start doing stretching, work out with bands a whole ton, use isometrics. Isometrics is going to be, in my opinion, in hindsight, wrestling, like my channel's supposed to be in hindsight. So in hindsight, I would have had more foundational type of training instead of the aesthetic training. Do you see what I mean? The aesthetics are a side effect of proper training, proper nutrition, and proper rest. And in this day and age, you don't have to look like Hulk Hogan. If you look like you're in shape and you look athletic, that could be enough to get you a job on TV. So the bar's been lowered a ton, which is good, because now you're not tempted to do PEDs, steroids, drugs, all that unnatural stuff. But old wrestlers, this is another thing, old wrestlers very much were gatekeepers. So I was on the indies and asking advice or working out or anything at all, they would either tell me to F off, shut up, get away from me, or just not even answer me. They were very protective. And Al Snow talked about that. You had to earn your way into getting the information you needed to move forward in the business. So I learned it all the hard way, much like we talked about in the locker room episode. But I would definitely say, do the things that have nothing to do with you looking better as a priority, because then when you're in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, my God, you're going to feel 100 times better than anybody else at that age group.
With, I just want to mention briefly, Sheamus was hovering around 300 pounds for quite a lot of his career, and then when he returned after a while, he dropped a lot of weight, found out that he was more cut, and he looked bigger on TV at 260 than he did at 300. So a bit of advice for you there, at least from Sheamus. Can you give us some exercises, the old school bodybuilding exercises that I suspect pro wrestlers did, that just people would just tell you, whatever you do, don't do that now? I'll give you a couple of examples. Apparently, Road Warrior Animal used to do this, had a ridiculous shoulder press.
Behind the neck.
But he'd do the press from, the behind the neck one. And then another one, which, before I ever started looking at YouTube workout videos, one I hated, and then my brother always tried to get me to do, was like either cambered or straight barbell, and the shoulder raises like that. And I could feel my shoulders clicking every single
upright
time.
Rows.
And I knew
upright
it didn't
rows.
Yeah, upright. I hate them.
Yeah.
But like that's old school mentality at the time. Are there any other examples like that where these days people would say just don't do it?
Well, I would say deadlifts to a certain point, even though that's one of the 4 major lifts. Hip hinging, I threw my back out doing plenty of deadlifts during my career and especially post-wrestling career. I think we need to back up and say your training and everything you do for rehab, foundational training, no matter what it is physical therapy for your body, specifically your spine. You need to protect your spine at all costs. It's your moneymaker. You're bumping. And then you need to have more chapters after your career. So protecting your spine, and Crowbar, who's a physical therapist, and a couple of people, I did a video on the fitness channel about I'll never deadlift again. And I was doing deadlifts with the X3 bar, which is a resistance band. So it wasn't the heavy momentum deadlifts or anything, but my back went out. I was done for a month. So to me, if you're done for a month like that from a training injury, you're in trouble, because wrestling, you show up, you get paid. And if you get like Cody's chest injury, the pec injury, they did an amazing job of turning that into a storyline, the Hell in a Cell with Seth Rollins. You aren't going to have that benefit with that kind of injury to do that. If you're not figured in, they don't care if you got hurt deadlifting, next man up. So I would eliminate deadlifts if you can help it. Add isometrics in, add a lot of, the yoga is going to take care of your lower spine, stretching, all that stuff. I would say the behind the neck press is stupid. Behind the neck pull downs, anything that doesn't ergonomically match up with your body, because you're going to get hurt wrestling. You're going to get banged up. Why do it in the gym? Oh, you're going to also get hurt training. So you have all these different things to manage. That's why I said, if you get one thing out of this entire clip or episode about training, train like it's physical therapy, like it's prehab. Prehab would be great because you won't get injured, and rehab and recovery. If you do all those things, and you do a very basic workout regimen, you're going to look, and more importantly, you're going to feel good.
I also want to mention briefly Larry Zbyszko I spoke to, and he said, I barely ever train legs because, hey, your knees are going to wear out sooner rather than later. He just had naturally big legs, which some people are lucky with in professional wrestling and look good in trunks.
By the way, what a great heel he was.
Oh, yeah.
He was exactly the heel. He's one of the heels I watched where I said, I can do that. I can annoy people. I can piss people off, and I can talk. Just even his tone of the way he talked, that disgusted look on his face of everything, and just loud mouth. He was far, far underrated. And when they just kind of handed him the AW World title without any kind of story, it just sucked. But he was the greatest Western States Heritage Champion in history.
And a wonderful belt it was as well. Let's talk about the diet then. I forget about diet today. People are far more conscious of what they put in their bodies, and we're not talking about extracurricular supplements either, although that's something we can talk about another time as well, I'm sure.
When
old school wrestlers,
talk about it?
Oh, a future episode. I haven't got a drink to drink out of. The old school, so former WWF stars from the 80s or whatever, AWA, what would they be eating and drinking on the road? Would it just be purely pizza and full-fat milk and beer, or what would their diets consist of?
Well, it depends. I mean, Steve Austin tells a very famous story that every wrestler has lived in that era, and even up until now, a few, where basically they had to get, Ted DiBiase talked about it too. They all would chip in for a loaf of bread. They would get bologna. They have a can of tuna. Even Steve talked about a potato, eating a potato raw. You didn't have a lot of choice because you're making $5 to maybe, if you're lucky, $40 a night, working 7 days a week, driving, convenience stores. You didn't have time, much less the money, to sit down at a restaurant and have a proper meal, which also tons of sodium and other things in there that don't do you any favors. And protein shakes and bars weren't a thing until like Lex Luger started bringing protein powder on the road, and then it kind of became a thing. So it was literally, you were starving. So you'd lean out just from not having money for food, but you needed to feed your body, feed yourself, hot dogs. Like it would literally just be eating for survival. And these guys, they would work out probably, but their workout in the ring, think about it. How many 60-minute draws did Flair do? How many matches were 20, 30, 40 minutes? How many matches at Madison Square Garden ended because of the curfew? I mean, these guys were working hard 7 days a week. So maybe that was their workout. As far as nutrition, it was pretty much a fight for survival. And that Ted DiBiase and Steve Austin especially, the story about everybody chipping in for a loaf of bread and lunch meat, not even like ham, cheese, and whatever, like bologna or the cheapest cut of whatever, in order to survive. That tells us. So now, of course, they also, what I heard was, but they bought 4 cases of beer for the ride. So their priorities weren't exactly lined up with a bodybuilder. I think if he was
get
still,
them empty carbs in.
Dude, if he was still around, and another guy I would like to talk to, it would be Morocco. But if Billy Graham was still alive, that would be a guy I would ask about nutrition from the bodybuilding world and how you were able to still keep that physique, outside of PEDs, traveling. Because I remember him saying, like, bodybuilding was, you had a strict schedule of when you slept, when you ate, when you trained. And he goes, that's turned on its ear when I think it was on the 350-day documentary. He said, it's totally turned on your ear. No, there's no routine in pro wrestling.
Now, we've got the body of an old school pro wrestler, big arms, big chest, big legs, big stomach as well. Like barely anyone had abs in the old days, I'll tell you. But now we have to decide what height we're going to be. And why I say that is because build heights and real heights can often be a little bit of a discrepancy occasionally. Just so we can clarify, what was, when you were active anyway, because I know obviously people lose height. You're probably more likely to lose height if you're having your spine compressed in pro wrestling. But in the ECW days, WWF, WWE days, what was your build height and what was your real height?
My build height was 6'2", but I was 6'3". And yes,
did Triple H tell you that you had to be shorter?
I was going to say, for the Patreon people, you put it in the notes. I have no doubt. And he's already a tall dude. I think he's 6'4", or he was. Like I said, we all shrank naturally, and especially compressing your spine each and every day. Yeah, I don't know. And his quads are definitely bigger than mine, so there was no edict put down or memo from the seamstress like Renee.
Mm-hmm. Have you spoke to Renee about that since?
No, I haven't.
Because I hope I didn't misquote the story.
For all I know, he messaged me on Instagram, but I haven't been on social media in like 6 weeks. But hey, everybody, please check out Cafe de Renee. I have to catch up on some of the videos.
I think it's ended.
Was that?
Someone told me it was ended.
That's a shame.
Well, he needs a new co-host. Maybe you should put your hand up.
I've already volunteered. Now you need to work on the other channel with me. I've already volunteered you. If you're going to volunteer me to be on other shows, then you get the job. You're hired.
You did volunteer me for 2 separate things before we started this podcast. Damn it, show today. I said podcast.
Thank you.
Oh, never mind.
Well, you know why? Because you were talking about ribs last week, and I got a good one for James. I'm just going to book him out.
Yeah, I know
I'm gonna
you've
book him
signed
out
up for everything.
2026.
I know you've signed me for everything, buddy. I'll tell you. All right, let's do some heights. Right, so here's the game. Here's the game that I know I've put up a game weeks ago that we never got to. Future episode, everybody. Take a drink. I looked up pro wrestlers build heights, 32 in all. And as someone who is fairly pretty darn tall, quite frankly, 6'3", very tall. In fact, you're almost in the top. What would the top 1 percentile be? Sorry, 99th percentile would be. I'm Buff Bagwell now. That'd be 6'6" would make you in the 99th.
I am
percentile,
6'2" now, so WWE knew something I didn't know way back in the day, that I would shrink down to 6'2".
They were playing the long game, WWE, obviously. But we're going to be talking about these build heights, and I imagine they were build heights from their primes, and they just never changed them. But having said that, I'm going to give you some names, their build heights, and I want you to tell me their real heights. And the first one is The Undertaker. Build height, 6'10".
I would say that's accurate. I've stood next to Taker, and it's definitely, I thought he was 7 feet. And that's what they built.
Really?
They built him as 7 feet in the beginning. Now, he had his wrestling boots on, and the soles, even without the lifts, you're adding another ½ inch to an inch with standard iron crepe soles. But there were people, like Hogan had lifts. I know he's on here somewhere, is he? God, we got to.
Oh, yeah.
How much madder can Hogan get at me? Still got to try the beer out. Maybe we can make that. Oh, it's warm too. It's in a pantry.
I was going to say, vote Democrat. You'll make him mad.
Oh, man.
Oh, we didn't even see the video of him not tearing his T-shirt off at the second Republican whatever.
Can we react off that during this episode as an impromptu segment? What went wrong? We'll circle the trick.
We're actually doing some recording afterwards for that, so yes, we will include that, definitely. Okay, next one is okay. I'm going to give you what I think as someone who's watching them on TV, roughly what I think their real heights are, and you tell me how. Anyway, I would have thought Undertaker was a legit 6'7". That's my guess. Next one is Kane, build at either 6'11" or 7 foot across his career.
Well, definitely not 7 feet, but you have to think about it. I don't know about Taker, I would assume, but Kane, and you have Kevin Nash on here, they played basketball. So they were definitely in the high 6s, near 7s for the positions they played. Glenn, who I've obviously been around, I would say he's definitely 6'10", like easy. Maybe not today. Like I said, everybody starts shrinking a little bit, but he's a tall dude. And then with boots on, everybody naturally has another inch on top of that. Did he wear lifts? No, I don't think he did, but I would call it, if I was being conservative to try to expose the lies of WWE heights, I would say minimum he's got to be 6'8", because he's right up there about the same height with Taker, if not the same exact height.
John Cena. Oh, also, just before you mention with Kane, he wears lifts.
He does.
In the old school, in the old school Kane outfit, he definitely did. I don't know about later on, but I'm sure he wore lifts in the old.
You know what? Can we just dedicate a whole thing about the dangers? If we can have some footage, wearing lifts in the ring is really a dangerous idea. To roll an ankle, your knees, Achilles injuries, all that stuff, dude. I think I just said it. There's your clip. But it's such a stupid move. It's such a vanity move because you can shoot somebody low from the cameraman angle and you can make me look 7 feet walking down to the ring. And the ring is already high enough to where everybody's looking up. And we'll raise the roof. There you go.
Okay, we'll get to lifts at the end because there's a couple of people threatening to wear lifts on this list, I believe. John Cena.
John is deceptively tall because he got the Popeye body, but he's tall. I would say he was probably eye to eye with me, 6'3", probably 6'2", 6'3".
He was billed at 6 foot.
That shows that, man. Well, wait a minute. He also had the spiky hair at one time, the prototype.
He had the flat top at one time.
No, he had it way up here, like Vanilla Ice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the Kid and Play thing.
When he was prototype out in the West Coast. All right, you're right. He's probably 6 foot, 6'1". I'm really bad at this game.
Randy Orton billed at 6'5".
Maybe 6'4". Taller than me for sure. big dude. You got to think too, he's like a shoot 290 right now. So the body type too, like just looks larger than life. I would say probably 6'3", 6'4".
We saw him at me and Chris actually went to the house show, the live event WWE in Manchester in the Co-op Arena last week or the week before, whenever it was. And all we were doing when Randy Orton came out was, look at him, he's massive. God, look at his calves. We were like gay for him. He was huge. And also he spent the most time with the fans as well after. He spent like 12 minutes, 15 minutes like signing pictures, taking photos and whatever. Next one on the list is Chris Jericho, billed at either 5'11" or 6 foot throughout his career, and dare I say he is a famous lift wearer.
I would say 5'10", 5'11". It's probably accurate. Because we're talking about if he's not wearing lifts, then it's about a half inch to an inch for the sole. If he wears another inch, that'll put him right around 6 feet.
There's a theory going around that he's actually nearer 5'8".
Well, I did a couple matches with him. Yeah, I was taller than him in the match, but you got to think about that. This is where even I can misconstrue a height or even a weight. Poise, presence, charisma. They all make you taller and larger than life. That just proves Chris is a great worker because you don't ever think, no, he's just a little guy. He's just short. He's not very heavy. Chris has carried himself like a top guy.
Now, this next one I put in because, one, he's a small guy, but there seemed to be a joke running around that whatever he was billed at, he just kept billing himself as taller and taller. So at one point, Adam Cole was billed at 6 foot. But I think fans would say he was near a 5'7". What do you think?
No, I worked at him. He's taller than 5'7". I would probably say 5'10". So, yeah, he didn't come off like something. And this could also be because of the weight loss, the muscle loss, that he looks a lot smaller and shorter. The opposite of the way Chris. Now Adam is charismatic. He does have poise and presence, but it's overshadowed by the lack of size. And I think that makes him look shorter.
He's even slimmer now. He's come back from injury. It's funny. I saw a comment once to say, does AEW ban gyms and workouts? Because he is small, Adam Cole.
It's almost to the point where I worry that, does he have a neck or a spinal injury? Because that's the only thing. It looks like almost like his arms are atrophied. It's not that he's lazy. And Adam, when I worked him in ROH, he was in good shape. You know, he wasn't the biggest guy in the world, but you could tell he worked out. So, by the way, speaking of Adam, one of my favorite matches, and I can't think of the exact pay-per-view, Adam Cole versus Kyle O'Reilly at Hammerstein, I believe. I think it might have been a final battle match or something. Just an awesome match. I thought it was one of the better stories in Ring of Honor between him and Kyle O'Reilly.
Next one is Raven, billed at 6'1". Now, I had always thought that Raven...
Lifts. Yeah, he wears lifts.
I thought that Raven was maybe like 5'10", 5'11". I stood next to him and was like, he's deceptively tall, actually. So, 6'1" sounds right to you?
Now, was he wearing his boots? Not the wrestling boots, but the boots, same one, Doc Martin boots or whatever they are. Was he wearing boots?
That I don't know. I didn't see his footwear.
Because he wears boots that have large heels. So even in regular conventions, if he's wearing those boots, they're like lifts. So, but he definitely...
So Cuban heels, and basically.
But he also did the gimmick with the loaded boot. So the one sole was white. He wore black boots, but just because that was the loaded boot, he used to do the old loaded boot thing, which I love, but it didn't really catch on. Now, with the lifts, both boots are loaded, so it doesn't matter.
So 6'1" sounding right enough for Raven then?
I think 6 feet, probably. Yeah. Just touching it. I would say he's between 5'11" and 6.
Yeah. JBL, Bradshaw. 6'6" he was billed at.
That could be about right. I would say anytime I've been in the ring with him, I would say they may have exaggerated 1 inch maybe, but he's a monster, dude. Even if you see like when he came into that, was it GCW where he came in and clotheslined that kid Effie? Dude, he was like up to his stomach or something. He's a giant dude, man.
He turned up in TNA as well, clothesline Joe Hendry, I think, as well at the pay-per-view.
And he's getting back in shape, ready to do it again.
Yeah, he's doing CrossFit and whatever else. Oh, well, he's calling it CrossFat. Anyway, next one is Taz, billed at 5'9".
God, why did you do this? We just, me and him just started getting along. Why do we just... We're talking about saunas and working out and rest, recovery, nutrition. No way. No. Probably 5'7".
Next one.
Man, excuse me.
Chris! Edit that.
There's the hook.
The Rock. 6'5".
Maybe. I think a lot of these are factored in with the boots. So I would guess 6'4".
Edge, also 6'5".
No. 6'3", 6'4". Tall dude. I would say 6'4", and then 6'5", 6'6", with maybe lifts. Edge is a tall dude. He's a tall, lean guy, which makes him look taller. That's my estimation. But whenever I stood next to him, there was not that, like 1 inch shorter than Bradshaw. There wasn't that thing where you're almost looking up at John. I didn't get that. When you get above 6'5", guys my size, 6'2", 6'3", are looking sort of up at someone.
Roderick Strong, 5'10".
No way. I'd say 5'8", 5'9".
Rhino, 5'10".
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, I've wrestled him. Yeah. He looks shorter because he looks like a rhino. He's got that width, so that kind of makes it look shorter.
Dude, that guy's legs. I mean, Triple H must have been really annoyed when there was no way he could pretend
that's why he got released twice. That was the reason why.
It probably was. Next one, Billy Gunn, billed at 6'5", and that's just a big dude.
Dude, I'm
anyway.
thinking
He's
they shortened him. That must have been a Triple H call. Dude, Billy feels like he's 6'7". He's a big dude. I think that's the other way. One of the ones where they underestimated the height.
Now, your former favorite, maybe Shawn Michaels. He was billed at any number of different heights. 6'1". I think he may have been billed at 6'2" at one point, but 6'1", maybe more recent times.
6'1's about accurate. 6 feet, 6'1", and he still is one of my favorite performers. I can separate that from the other thing.
The next one is the Sandman. Someone else I've stood next to. He is a tall, lanky dude, billed at 6'4".
I thought he'd be taller. No, I mean, not in another way. I'm not saying when I look at him, but he's already tall. I thought he was 6'4", 6'5". He might be somewhere in between there. Yeah, that's about accurate.
Now, someone who I do believe his real height was 6'4", but they billed him at 6'2", Mick Foley.
Yeah, deceptively tall. I would call 6'3", 6'4".
Now, obviously, he's going to be someone who's done a lot of damage to his spine. I can imagine
he might be
he's probably
5'2"
6'2"
now. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. He's sort of that thing. Now, next one. Someone, I'm not sure. Right, okay, it says billed at 5'7". I think he was billed at taller over time, but Eddie Guerrero.
He was probably built taller because he got super jacked, and that kind of made him look a little more. It was kind of the reverse effect. Like Rhino looks shorter because he's so thick. Eddie kind of grew as his body kind of got bigger. I would probably guess 5'8", 5'9", maybe, which is around, I don't know if you have Benoit on here, but they were about the same height. Then, and I can't see them touching 6 foot. But the work made them larger in life. That's why we're kind of confused, because the eye test, the production, even being in the ring with some of these guys, the way they carry themselves, you don't think this is like, even Taz, even though he's built taller, dude, he's throwing you and doing all this stuff and he's stronger. I would feel like that's way more impressive, that the height has nothing to do with that.
Next one is, and you can tell this is from all eras, Nigel McGuinness, billed at 6'3".
Yeah, that's accurate. I've been in the ring with Nigel. He's a tall dude.
Another person billed at 6'3", William Regal.
That might be slightly exaggerated because anytime I saw his boots, they look like the soles are pretty thick, not in full lift territory, but he might be 6'2". And I've worked Regal, and we're kind of eye to eye. So it might have been during the time when I was still 6'3", so that might be accurate. But, once again, today, all these numbers for most of these veterans and legends are diminished.
Next one, we've got 12 left. Jerry Lawler, billed as 6 foot. Now, I always thought Lawler was a typical 5'10" guy. Am I thinking right there?
You're on with that. I think when someone's right around 6 foot on paper, it's because of the Vince McMahon thing. He does not want to see fives. That was the thing with Taz. Taz, by the way, I'm not doing this to make up for it, but it's the absolute truth. Taz should have been so much of a bigger star in WWE. So much. I mean, that debut versus Kurt Angle, the crowd, when the sign went up, and Howard Finkel, they had to dub over because he said from the right hook section before he even came out, they did a great job covering that in post. Did you remember that?
No, I didn't know that. I actually had it taped off TV as well. I never noticed that.
Well, if you notice, they've really turned the volume down when Howard Finkel initially said, from the red hooks, and he stops. And then when Taz was coming closer to the ring and everybody saw it was Taz, Howard announced, it was one of the few little faux pas Howard ever made. They wanted everybody to lay out until Taz got into everybody's sight there. So, but you talk about that debut versus Kurt Angle and the run he should have had. Once again, do good, but don't do too good. That guy should have been world champion. I don't care what anybody says.
Okay, I'll say this very quick. We could do an entire section on Taz, but how to devalue Taz as quickly as possible? Well, immediately put him in a feud with Albert and the Big Boss Man, who are both 6'6" guys, or Albert's even bigger, I think. Make him look as small as possible, and then have Triple H beat you on SmackDown clean within a few months. That happened.
Don't forget, have an angle with Jerry Lawler, team up with Raven, and Jerry Lawler gets the best of both of you to some degree in the end.
And then have your team with Spike Dudley. And there's nothing wrong with Spike Dudley, but he was like the one guy smaller than Taz in the company. And then they gave him the tag titles briefly, I think, too. Just Taz was so wasted in WWE.
That might have been a Tony Garea special. Hey, you're short and got to make a team.
Mr. Personality, I believe he was called. At one point was Mr. Garea, 5-time tag team champion.
5 times more than I had it, so I need to shut up. Hey, smart ass.
I think, was it Waltman who just said he was so-and-so's tag team partner? He was he was Rick Martel or Dean Ho's tag team partner.
Yeah, that's why they should change it from, because Marty Jannetty was an incredible worker, and everybody says, oh, he's the Marty Jannetty of the team. Let's switch it to, he's the Tony Garea of the team. That's a lot more. Shane Douglas would love that.
He hates Tony Garea as well.
And I said he has every reason to. Shane, I trust what I said last week about Tony. I would trust Shane's evaluation of Tony better than mine.
With that being said, in a future episode, we're going to be ranking, take a drink, road agents over the years. Now, Kevin Nash, 6'11", he was billed at. They even made a thing in WCW when Kevin Nash was feuding with the Giants, and Kevin Nash says, hey, I stayed in the cool height. I didn't go beyond 6'11". When you're in the 7-foot range, that's when you're a goofball. And but he was billed.
He meant that too, probably.
Yeah, he probably did. 6'11". I believe he suggested that nowadays he might be near a 6'9" or 6'9.5", just due to age.
Yeah, I would say when you get, like I said about the Bradshaw stuff and everything, when you get into the, the 6'5", 6'6" and above, everybody's tall. You're looking up at everybody. So I would say 6'11" is very, because if you're going to say you're 6'11", and maybe Kevin's so smart that 7 foot is a stretch, 6'11", nobody's going to question it. And in this episode, I don't think I'm questioning it either.
Next one, an interesting one. CM Punk. I think he was 6'2" in the UFC. Now, people can lie about the heights in UFC as well, by the way. I remember Conor McGregor in Eddie Alvarez, and they both claim 5'9", and Eddie Alvarez is like a head shorter than Conor McGregor. But anyway, CM Punk, I think he was a legit 6'2", measured in UFC. But what did you think? About right?
Yeah, we worked a lot. I mean, if you look at all the ECW stuff, they're like, please just stop beating Stevie up, Punk. Go move on to the world title. He's had enough, like The Simpsons. He's already dead.
Stop. He's you the Hamburglar.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, but he's 6'2". Yeah. Maybe not today, once again.
Chris Candido. Now, on Wikipedia, it says 5'8". I've got a feeling he was billing himself as taller than that, but it's 5'8", right? Shorter, taller. I think he wore lifts as well.
Oh, yeah, he definitely did. And there's matches where I think he wrestled Taz, and they're about eye to eye. So whatever for Taz goes with Chris Candido.
Yeah. Drew McIntyre, 6'5" billed as.
Oh, I'd believe that. Yeah, I would definitely believe that. I mean, to say if he was 6'4", Drew is one of those guys, when I worked him, I'm looking up at him. So that's why the threshold, I think, 6'5". I thought he was taller. He's a big dude, man.
Yeah, if he said 6'6", I would have no questions on that one as well. How many times did you wrestle Drew? Was it just the once?
Once. He was a Valve champion. I was wrestling him in Nebraska, and we had him like a three-way dance thing. It was me and some other guy wrestled, and then Drew came out, wanted to defend the Evolve title. I worked him. I mean, that was pre-beard and everything. That was when he was just starting to kind of make his own name. Then he went to TNA after that. And like I said before, if a Drew McIntyre doesn't touch you, there's no excuse for anybody smaller than that. No excuse.
I like
Except
to think
for
that
Chris
Drew
Benoit.
McIntyre...
He used to hit me a lot.
Yeah. Hey?
Huh?
Oh, in that way. I'd see what you mean. Isolating that sentence, that could be a ring boy scandal kind of thing.
Oops. Well, we won't touch on that now.
No touching. No bad touches. Next one, Chris Benoit, 5'11".
No way. No way.
Come off.
Same height as Eddie Guerrero. Same height as Eddie Guerrero. So whatever that is, that's what we're looking at. They had to look at the ring when they were at, if you're still allowed to watch it somewhere, WrestleMania 20. The end of the pay-per-view, they're celebrating. They're eye level with each other, at least what I could see.
This is an unfair one, but back in the day, Hulk Hogan was billed at 6'7". Now, a dozen back surgeries later, and when you saw him sitting at catering, I mean, you were sitting, I know, but not stood next to each other.
He was sitting on the $2 million a year and he needed to live on. Made him a lot taller.
I mean, if he stood on his $2 million, he'd definitely be 6'7" and taller. But how tall was he in his later years, Hogan?
Dude, he was billed at like 6'9" during the 80s at certain times. If I can remember.
In Rock and Wrestling. Cartoon, he was 6'7" and 303 in the intro.
What's he now? I don't know. Still taller than me. I would assume that. Maybe he might be sick. Look at all the back surgeries. The dude has like electrodes and hardware in his spine that have been replaced multiple times to activate his back so he can walk. So he's definitely had, like I've had this happen on my neck, and then I lost 2 levels from the spine infection. So I could be 6 foot by the end of this episode. Who knows? But I would say he's probably 6'5", 6'6".
As a wrestler once told me, invest in an inversion table and you'll never shrink.
I have a Teeter affiliate. Thumbs up. It's in the description.
Oh, if you can send me one, I want
I'll
one.
Talk to them.
Okay.
I might be on one of their infomercials coming up soon, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right.
Future
well, we need
episode
to
of
have
QVC. Future episode.
Oh, so what are you going to be? Is like beforehand you were...
We're going to talk
Spike
about
Dudley
how it helped me recover, and it really did. Their stuff was really good at decompressing my spine.
Next one, Okada, 6'3". He's a tall... I mean, he hangs around with the Young Bucks, so, I mean, he could be 5'10" and look tall.
Yeah, I worked Okada in probably the internet's most hated match ever, where I beat him clean on Explosion. 6'3". I love to remind everybody. I usually get to comment. I just watched it. I can't believe this happened.
Next one. Now, this is good. This is a tough one we're getting into, as I say, the uncool heights, according to Kevin Nash.
Now this guy's going to get mad at me.
Big Show, Paul White, billed at 7'4". foot. Was he ever a legitimate 7 foot in your opinion?
Yes, 100%. 100%. Legitimate 7 foot plus. Was he 7'4", like they said, like Andre? I don't know. Because this gets into the part where I'm watching certain things in WWF at the time and other things. Like he did some stuff with Taker. I think Taker was about maybe chin level or mouth level with him. So he's definitely 7 feet tall.
So you're saying that Big Show doesn't have a posse at 7'4" and 520
He should.
pounds?
I remember those stickers at all the tall booths throughout the years. Andre has a posse. It's good stuff. Roadkill, huge. He does a great Andre the Giant impression. I got to get it for the soundboard. But he had a bunch of those. Meanie had a bunch of those. We used to put them on the tall booths and stuff like that when we would drive late at night. So between Philly and Pittsburgh on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, there's probably still the Andre the Giant has a posse sticker somewhere.
For people who don't know, it's a graffiti kind of thing that ended up, for legal reasons, turning into the Obey Giant. And Obey comes from...
They live.
They live. One of the greatest documentaries ever, as you described.
It absolutely is. That's another show to get demonetized for another time.
Yes. We've got 3 more. AJ Styles, 5'11" he's billed at.
I'd say that's about accurate. Maybe 10. Maybe.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought he was like more like 5'8".
No, because I've been in the ring with him, and it's just, I mean, obviously the Styles clash, the one that I messed up, totally my fault. We'll talk about it on. Go ahead.
Another show.
Future episode. Oh
yeah.
But I mean, that was the height difference. That I knew I was taller than him because of that. But eye to eye, he was still not that much shorter than me. I mean, obviously not as tall at 6'2", 6'3", but I wouldn't say 5'8". I don't know.
2 more. Triple H.
Oh, he's
6'4".
5'2".
Yeah, I figured that. It's all mirrors.
1 foot 5 inches of lifts. He's one of those still performers at Disneyland or Disney.
I've never been Disney. You know, I've never been Disneyland.
You're not missing it. They just raised the prices like $80 a ticket.
Jesus, I mean, it's going to be like 1,000 in it soon. You know, like I went to Universal Studios a few months ago. This is nothing to do with anything. You went to Universal Studios in anyway, it was in Japan. It was the Osaka one. And it was like, in dollars, it was probably $150 to get in. And then a line pass, like a fast track thing, was like another 70 or something like that. And it's like, that's per person. And there were only 2 rides worth riding. And we only got to do once. It's total rip-off. Anyway.
Oh, I gotta, if Chris, maybe we'll put it in here as a fun little thing. We prefer Universal. I like Universal. I'm a big movie fan. My wife, this is like post, 2 things. This is post-spine infection. I went on the Mummy. I hate roller coasters. I'm terrified. And Hagrid's, the motorcycle one. 2 separate occasions, not the same day. I needed months to recover. So we go on the Mummy, and you can tell I'm scared. Like, it's the dark, if I know I'm on a simulator like Back to the Future, I know it's fake. You know what I mean? I can kind of like, okay, we're not dropping, we're not on a track. I go into the Mummy, and it's all dark, like for the thing. And I'm clearly like terrified. And my wife's just kind of, like you said, this is where she's laughing at me and like making fun of me. And I was like, I know what's about to happen. I know it's about to happen. Oh, hey, Stevie Richards, the guy running the ride. He's like, don't worry, it's fine. It's not that scary. Because I'm sweating. I'm looking around. I'm literally looking around like, and obviously you get that thing where you're making the half shoulder turn. Like, I'm just going to turn. Hopefully no. And that's exactly when I got recognized when I said, baby, can we just leave? And he goes, hey, Stevie Richards. And we get on the ride. And when we come out, that dude and the girl behind the counter are waiting. And they're laughing, not in a mean way, but laughing. And as we're walking by, I'm not even going up to the kiosk. It's like, oh, don't you want the picture? Because we took a picture while you were on the ride. And my wife goes, yes, I do believe we do want that picture.
Do you still have that picture?
Yeah, Chris is going to put it up. So put it up. And she's laughing at me next to me, and it's...
Why'd you go on him if you hate it? I like him.
Because I love my wife.
Oh, fair enough.
The Hagler ride.
I'll give you an example.
The Hagler ride, if I can, because the CT will kick in, I had to psych myself up for that. And that was fun, actually. Right? And we were going to have a GoPro to the chest so you could show it. But where it's quiet. Oh, by the way, they put us in the front car both times, I think. The front car. On Hagrid's. So I'm like, oh, my God. We're there. It's really quiet. There's kids behind us and everything. And it was making noise, but all of a sudden it got quiet. And at that moment, Chris bleeped this out. At that moment, I closed my eyes, I gripped the thing, and I go, let's go! And my wife was like, oh my God. And I still was scared. So there, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, disaster follows me everywhere, right? But it's either just before or just after I do something. It's like, the Manchester Arena bombing. I was there the day before. Every single time I fly, there's a major, or most, I fly a lot more these days than I used to, but every single time I flew on my own, there'd be a major plane crash the day before or the day after. The first time I went to New York was the day that the Boston bombers were heading to Times Square to blow it up. Terrorism follows me everywhere, but is always a day late or a day early.
And you know who you are?
Go on.
You're the Mothman. You're basically a living Mothman prophecy come to life.
Okay.
Look it up.
You're going to have to explain that for me. All right.
If you look it up, it'll be a nice rabbit hole. It's in West Virginia, and it's a sign of impending doom.
I am that.
Yeah.
And where I'm tying with this in, I was at probably the UK's most famous theme park. It's called Alton Towers. It's in Stoke, or around Stoke Way. And I went on a brand new roller coaster called the Smiler. And the Smiler was by far the most intense roller coaster I've been on at that time. And all it does is it's so fast, it bashes your head back and forth, and it just gives you just micro concussions every 10 seconds. It's just tons of drops, tons of loops. It's really intense. Anyway, a couple of days later, that's when the Smiler had a very, very famous crash where it either killed or maimed at least 8 people, including some people who lost their legs.
Oh, my God.
And it's just I am just a harbinger of doom, but I always just miss it. So anytime I go anywhere, something terrible will happen to someone else.
Well, the show seems to be doing okay for now. So I don't know how many episodes in. My wife is getting
but we've not been in the same place.
Oh, not.
I was going to say, if I turned up, if I went to Florida, something terrible would happen to Florida. That day. If I was just in a 7-Eleven, that would blow up the day after.
Let's hope we broke the trend, because we are going to hang out soon, and I don't want to be part of your whole prophecy. Yeah. Here, my wife is sending the picture right now, as a matter of fact.
Oh, good.
So I'll make sure Chris has it.
Before I forget, we've got one more person on the height chart, and this is going to lead to a question. Great Carly.
I got a picture, and I got to find it, of myself, and let's use proper grammar. Great Khali and I were in a picture, and literally I'm looking at his sternum. So he's definitely over 7 feet tall. What was he billed at in the 7s?
It says 7'1".
I don't know, man.
If they'd said higher, I would have believed that 7'3" or something.
I thought he was 7. I thought he was every bit as tall as Andre. I mean, I don't know, man, because I've been in the ring with Big Show, but I never have looked up to anyone in the ring as much as with that one time. It was in Chicago. It was, oh man, that thing was real. He Barney Rubble me. It was bad. I was like, that was back to the Hamburglar on The Simpsons. I'm dead already. Stop. After one move. But dude, I thought he was 7'4", 7'5". Giant Gonzalez was well over 7 feet. And I thought he was every bit as tall.
7'7", 7'6", something like that.
7'5", 7'6", something like that. Oh my God.
With that being said, I have to ask this.
This is going to be the thumbnail, by the way, isn't it? This picture of the mummy ride is going to be the thumbnail. That could be a whole clip that people, my riding the rides at Universal with a spine infection or recovering from a spine infection. God.
Did you ever see the Big Show Great Khali fight?
Fight?
They had a real fight in the locker room once.
I heard about it, but no, I did not see it.
All right, then we'll move on then.
That was
if you said you saw it.
That was like filming at 60 frames a second and then dropping it down to 24. Like slow motion.
Well, apparently, I've heard the story before that Khali was bobbing and weaving. And then eventually got the better of Big Show, apparently.
Khali, wrestling's tough to show coordination. You can have 2 left feet, but you can be athletic. The guy obviously loved going to the gym, loved working out, and I wouldn't doubt it if he just did some boxing, some basic boxing. Paul's a tough guy too, so you have to be in wrestling, but I don't know, bobbing and weaving and like he's using a noodle to train like we talked about before the show.
With that being said, I noticed that you, I know you build at 6'2", you were 6'3", I suspect in the RTC days as well, but you always made yourself look smaller than Val Venus in the publicity photos, and he was billed at the same height, or he's billed at 6'3", so I suspect he was 6'2" as well. Was that a conscious thing on your part?
Val was like a 6'3", 6'4" guy from what I understood. What I did, and this is a little bit of a secret, because I was just a manager, that one where we were standing with the red backdrop, where I had the eyes like this, I did the Jonathan Coachman, what he did during interviews. I spread my legs out to make myself a little shorter. John used to do that a lot because he's a tall guy, but he would have to spread his legs out and kind of squat down a little bit to make himself look shorter.
Do you know who else did that? Road Dogg, when he was the roadie with Jeff Jarrett, because Jeff Jarrett's 5'10". Road Dogg's like 6'4", 6'5".
Right?
Yeah.
He did the Hamburglar.
He did the split leg.
That was the Hamburglar. Never had the roadie used to walk.
Dead. But Road Dogg actually used to do the split leg things, because I remember asking him, and I said, dude, how hard did your knees hurt, just like having to crouch all the time with Jeff? And he's like, no, he did the Jean-Claude Van Damme to a less of an
picture, but
angle.
when they came to the ring, he was hunched. Yeah. Here's another thing. Notice Road Dogg was always in front of Billy or in front of them, like kind of spread-legged doing the thing or the DX sign. He always, you want to talk about a wrestling family, we can do an entire episode of positive stuff. The Armstrongs, they, in my estimation, consistently the greatest wrestling family in history. Just a bunch of good guys, great workers, great attitudes, served others, served the business, and especially Bob never got the main event push in WWE that he deserved.
Bob,
the father. Bullet Bob.
I was going to say he was never in WWE.
No, but he never got there. He should have gotten.
Oh, I see.
He should have gotten the opportunity.
Yeah.
They taught me a lot on the indies, just watching them, all of them. Good guys.
Now, very briefly, build weights. Do you know of anyone who completely fudged their weight higher or lower for television purposes?
Well, I think sometimes they will fudge my weight, because when I came back from losing all the weight, I was legitimately between 192, 199, but they billed me at 210, 215. Then they would bill 220, 230 for most. I think depending upon who you're working, now obviously cruiserweights, they would keep them, 180 to like 200 or something. But most guys, especially height comes into play with that, because if you're like Edge, they build him sometimes at like 240, 250. He wasn't that heavy, but he was tall. So you could believe, looking up at him from the crowd, and that guy's about 240, 250. Plus, think about it. Like, everybody was conditioned to know that a WWE wrestler, even Savage, I don't think Savage was 235. I think they built him at 235. Right? He might have been 200, 205.
I'm not sure about that. In the 80s days, I think he was definitely.
You think he was 240?
225.
I'm not saying he was 190, but you think about it too. Savage put on a lot of weight, but his weight was always in his shoulders, chest, and arms. He looks similar to he did in Memphis, where he's in great shape, but he had a waistline that I always hoped to have. No matter what, he was always big in the shoulders and very, very lean in the waist.
Randy Savage is actually a really good person to bring up as far as wrestlers who wore lifts. Now, I'm not saying Randy wore lifts, and maybe he did a tiny bit, I don't know, but he was somebody who would wear cowboy boots a lot when he wasn't wrestling, for whatever other in-ring stuff or even commentary. He would be dwarfing Vince McMahon. I mean, obviously he had the big jacket and the big hat and the glasses and everything. He presented bigger anyway, but then he would look taller than Vince as well, and I'm sure that Vince probably has 2 inches on him in real life. But what other wrestlers do you know that accentuated their height with their footwear?
Raven, I think that's the only one I'm kind of like mostly sure of just by looking at the soles. Other than that, I don't know. They might have given Luke Gallows lifts when he was the fake Kane to be more in line with, and that could have affected the work and the match, much like I said earlier. That's all I know. I don't know. It's kind of like hot stuff. Everybody was wearing hot stuff, and it was a thing, and that's a thing everybody loved or they hated because hot stuff would make you look more tan, more vascular, but it would also burn everything it came into contact with. I think that era, too, was the same era of the lifts and being taller and all that stuff. But now you just present the illusion, or everybody just figures it's really not about larger than life anymore. So that could be the one positive, because that's like saying Bryan Danielson is 6 foot, needs to wear lifts, but it will severely limit and hinder his work. You don't want that. The scariest thing with lifts is I've never seen it before, but it's like with my super kick. If I were to wear lifts, say I switched to wearing lifts, I would be knocking everybody's head off because now my measurement is completely off. So if Drew were to wear lifts, he'd be killing people with the Claymore because he's basing it on, I know where the boot is, I know where the depth of the boot is and all that stuff.
Okay, so the next element of looking like a superstar is, of course, in the dress. And I don't mean big Vito kind of dress kind of thing. I'm talking your trunks, your robes, your boots, your presentation as far as what you, the garb that you wear. It's funny that we're mentioning Randy Savage as well just beforehand because, I mean, he's like an all-time great when it comes to presenting yourself like a superstar in the clothes that you wear as well. But we're going to be ignoring the BWO and early Stevie days as far as the Daisy Duke shorts and the band T-shirts and stuff. We'll save that for a future episode. But some questions regarding what you wore early days, later days in WWE as well. How did you get gear made, especially in the early 90s when you started out? Like, how do you even get contacts to find out where to get this stuff in the first place?
Well, starting out, I did not have any contacts. As I said, or contacts. As I said in the last episode, I learned everything the hard way. I didn't have any clue who to go to, what to do. I went to the buy or die box and I knocked off kind of Hot Topics. Like not a Hot Topics, but kind of like the generic Walmart version of Hot Topics in my local neighborhood. And I just bought these shorts that had like pow, bang, all this. I was like, all right, they fit. I'm going to wear them. And I wore that for like my first couple matches, like the first one in ECW, with the Eastern Championship Wrestling at Michael Jack's Sports Bar. That was February 25th, 1992. Wow, last century, as I said before. But then I just basically had generic things that were kind of made or sewn. Like we're talking about biker shorts that just had something sewn on the side, nothing of any significance, had that. And then I was just kind of like looking for different tights and stuff. Then when I was told that I was going to be teaming up with Scotty, he wasn't raving yet, but they were bringing him in. Then Paulie got Scotty's old stuff, Scotty the Body, Scotty Flamingo, Scotty Polo. And I wore those for a little bit. Then when Raven did that, I was still wearing the Scotty Flamingo or Polo stuff. Then Raven had me switch after you knew Raven was the guy with the grunge T-shirts, the heavy metal T-shirts, and the jorts. I would do the half shirt in Daisy Dukes, And that just, I didn't have to worry about gear for many, many years. We could start with that and then go on to how it kind of evolved and devolved.
Well, I'm actually going to, as I say, we're going to leave the Daisy Duke shorts and the half t-shirt. We're actually going to leave that for another episode for when we get into BWO stuff, which, how can we have Stevie Richards' show and not talk about the BWO? It's been nearly 20
I've been
episodes
trying
so
to
far.
make sure it's a thing. It's not talking about.
I know, don't worry. Well, future episode. Where would... can you remember back in the day any of the emporiums out there where some people who actually knew about how to get proper gear made, where they would go to? Do you remember any of the old companies?
Well, most times what you would do is try to find an actual seamstress, maybe not a wrestling gear seamstress. You would go to a Joann Fabrics, which back then I don't even think they existed. You would try a fabric store, figure it out, and then go. They would hopefully measure you. Most times, it all depends on the pecking order, too. We're going to get in that with WWE and other places. But with that being said, you're kind of just, a lot of the indies were people wearing jeans and T-shirts, even before they were made a thing. And after Raven made it a thing, and then Just Incredible made it a thing, that's all you saw. And you probably still see it today on the indies. Somebody wearing just jeans and a T-shirt or whatever on every indie. It was really hard. I had the benefit, because if it went on much longer without Scotty sending his gear to wear and then going into Daisy Dukes and half shirt, I don't know what I would have wore. I wasn't sure what kind of gear, because we go through the gear that I just said and then the gear of everybody with kick pads and biker shorts. There was the robes and jackets, and it just always evolved. So I was kind of on an island when it came to all that stuff, and I had no connections to gear makers, to boot people or anything. My stuff was mostly store-bought.
Where did you get your first pair of boots then?
My first pair of boots were actually just like Doc Martin type boots from a thrift store. Like, they weren't boots. But you have a question here. You don't want to, like, Raven had regular boots, and then he switched over to iron crepe soles. Mostly every wrestling boot, at least back then, if you go to a shoe repair shop, you ask for iron crepe soles. They're very flat soles, no like kind of tread on them or anything. And then that's what I would do. And then you buy really good boots with the boots, the laces, all that stuff, the toe, not a steel toe, by the way. Don't go that route. But the soles can be easily replaced as long as the quality of the boot is durable. Oh, here's another thing. Larry Zbyszko, we mentioned him before. He said famously one time he didn't use shoelaces. He used parachute cord because they never ripped, tore, or frayed. Like the old, I guess, to tie up the parachute or whatever. Maybe it was just a BS PWI story or something. Probably.
I've never heard of a parachute cord of all things. I would have thought that'd be thicker.
Me too. Well, he's a heel. He can lie.
Yeah.
He got me, though. I'll have to give him a text, tell him you got me on that one.
Hey, was it you who was telling me about some guy on a show? I don't know if it was like a reality show or... No, I'm sorry. This was a question sent into Dutch's show. And it was like some like prospective wrestler who really wanted to get into... Anyway, he had a tryout in TNA, like maybe around 2010, 2011. You might have been with the company at the time. I don't know. Nick Aldis was there in the thing.
I was there until January 2011. So if it was 2011 after I left, I wouldn't know. But let's see.
Right. Anyway, there was some kid. It was for some other different reality show. I really want to be a wrestler, but his real life persona was that he saved money wherever he could, and he decided to have that saved money on his wrestling gear as well. And he refused to buy shoelaces. So what he did was he put his feet in the boots and then duct taped them. And every single one of the people he was wrestling in front of just said, "You need to invest money in your gear because it looks terrible." And then the guy was a bad wrestler anyway.
I do remember seeing that. I can't quite put my finger on who it was. Not me being at TNA, but I remember watching that clip on YouTube years ago. Oh man, we're gonna
still up there. I'll have to find the link for you and send it. But yeah, anyway.
Are you gonna send it with cocaine? That's gotta be cocaine. And then candy cane.
Oh,
We've started.
And candy cane.
There's people that tell us we started something that we might not want it to finish.
Who said
They're
that?
putting on a
who's
few people
blamed this on
watch the
us?
show say you guys started this whole. It's like we didn't ship them the gear and say, hey, you're going to be called cocaine.
You know, blue cane's now turned to yellow cane.
I thought it
and
was
then there was
blue
candy
pain.
cane.
I thought he was teaming.
Blue pain.
Wasn't blue pain. Now they're teaming. He's teaming with Gain.
And gain. And now there's candy cane and cocaine. And
Well, I want the person that comes out losing their hair called Rogaine.
Rogaine. Hulk Hogan. He could do that.
Stop. You'd see, this is the thing. I have to go to Clearwater eventually. I'm going to do karaoke at Hogan's Beach. Terribly, by the way. And then just go, hey, brother, I see you. Okay, got it. Then Flair's mad at me because I'm friends with Dud. It's going to be a mess. But we're going to film it.
Yeah.
We're going to film it all.
But the thing, at least you're in Florida, so you can have like a battle royal to work out your, convenient at least, work out all your issues. Boots. How often did you have to resole them?
Man, that's a good question because the ECW ring was terrible. So I would say probably you would stretch it out. Usually the indicator is when the heel or the toe starts flapping, and then you give it another couple months back then. Then you bring out I want to be a wrestler duct tape and start duct taping. I'd say
save the money.
I'd say safely, because if it starts to get too thin, then you're going to damage the actual boot because it's real close, and you're going to roll your ankle. There's a bunch of stuff that can happen if you don't have a good pair of soles. So like clockwork, every 6 months to a year.
I don't know where I heard this one from, but ordering boots and sending away for them back in the day, you'd have to trace your foot on a piece of paper and send that piece of paper off. Did you ever do that?
I did, and I never got the boots.
What? You sent a check?
I did. Pecking order. Remember, your value as a human being is determined by your place on the card.
Or if you get your boots that you paid for or not.
This isn't a level of customer service. Wrestling is not known for that.
Fair enough. Now, this is something that Dutch said, and I thought this was a very, very clever way of telling if somebody was green or not that you were in the ring with, and that is when they tied their boots, if they have their laces exposed or not.
Oh God, that's just common sense. Like they need a lot more help than just in wrestling. You're gonna run around a ring, dude. When I work out at the gym, when I go to my garage gym, I tuck my laces in while I'm doing cardio. It's just maybe wrestling made me do that, but why in the world, when you have all these different things that you can get caught up on, why would you leave your laces out? That's like somebody who's never had a match, much less being green.
Flicking in the eye kind of thing is an issue as well. If you're, ducking your head, let's say, and then a lace can flick up and hit you.
Well, that's another thing. Yeah, you go for a single leg and a shoelace gets in your eye. Yeah, that could be something. I don't know if Dutch went for too many single legs in his day, but...
More of a brawler.
Hey, by the way, Chris did a hell of a... He showed me that video, at least the first draft of that video of Dutchman Returns.
Yeah, we had to take it down.
Too much footage.
I was going to say. Yeah, too much footage. We're talking about boots and trunks and stuff like that. They can not get off the shelf, obviously, but, there are going to be companies around that you can order from a catalogue or send in, outlines of your foot and then not get your stuff. But what about more intricate stuff like, walkout robes, sequin, stuff like that? Was there any companies that would provide that? Or is that something that you would have to go to, as you say, a specialist seamstress for?
This is something where the veterans, I said earlier, you have to earn the information. If you're figured in or somebody likes you or somebody really wants to see you succeed, and that's the thing about wrestling. Nobody's going to give away their secret that makes them look like they stand out. They're not going to give that up because now there's another person that could, on an aesthetic level, be on the level that can compete with them. I never liked that, like treating it like classified information. You know why? If everybody looks like a star, then I have somebody to work with. Mm-hmm. That's the way I look at it. And I have more money and more matches and more angles, more storylines, and everybody gets elevated. Now, these things weren't cheap. It's a little bit more mass produced now. You can go to different people. There's more competition in the space. But back then when Flair talked about $10, $20, $50,000 robes, that's a shoot. I believe that. That's a handmade robe, even if it's just cubic zirconia or bezazzled type of material. You still have the feather boa. You have the material, the inseam. It's measured. It's custom fit. And like I mean, sometimes you would probably have a rush order, so you pay on top of that. Now it's like, I don't know. I think we regress back to kind of everybody sort of looking alike now too. If you look at people that have everything, so nobody's really unique in that way, and that could be because maybe the gear makers are looking around and then maybe the creative like juices are not flowing anymore in that way.
Steve Austin wore black trunks, so now everyone's got to wear some variation of black, I'm sure.
Yeah, but Steve also invested in this gimmick in WCW, Stunning Steve, with the robes, with the tights, with the look, the presentation. So he was somebody who invested money when he didn't even have it. World class, so think about that.
We're going to go to WWE designs now. Who came up with all the designs for all the various biker short style trunk? Because we're not talking about the early days, because it was Daisy Duke time still. We're not talking about the falling down style, Michael Douglas right to censor stuff. We're not talking about Tommy Dreamer's trousers either, that you really, really liked. We're talking about the biker shorts kind of styles. Very briefly, you wore trunks, which was a bit disconcerting, especially since we used to biker shorts from you for so many years. But who came up with all the colors and designs and whatnot?
Yeah, the trunks weren't really my favorite. I'm not, as I said earlier, leg day is not my favorite day. So, but I was just trying to be different because everybody was wearing bike shorts. I was the least trying, and that's where the pink came from. In WWE, it's a little bit easier, but there's that pecking order. If Triple H or Edge or Christian or these people need tights today, and they're working on your stuff gets pushed to the side. And especially if Vince or one of the writers has a spot for somebody that they need gear made for or something, that's definitely like a priority right there. Now, how it would work, there were two sisters. Then there was Sandra that came in she worked for WCW and came in WWE. There was a couple of former wrestlers, including Sasha Banks' ex-husband now, I think. I don't know. But he made stuff. The Hardys made their own stuff. That was the holy grail for me. If I had enough initiative, I would have learned how to sew and make my own stuff. And I could have made money on the side, even today, doing that stuff. So the Hardys made their own stuff, which was really awesome. But there's a pecking order. I used to get stuff made like in bulk. So when you have time to make me 5 sets of kickback covers, 5 sets of biker shorts, and sometimes I would have the wrist gauntlets or whatever to cover the tape to stand out. I was never a jacket or robe guy, so I wasn't getting to that point. But I would have those things made in bulk because I knew if I can get them made, I'm buying myself time. Another thing I would do that wrestlers would never really do a whole lot, I would prepay for all of them. And usually that would put me like more at the front of the line because what do? I mean, wrestlers get their gear and it takes forever for these people to get their money. That's just the way it always is.
Well, you just said something that I was going to ask you then. So you prepaid, so that means you had to pay for your gear from with the sisters and Sandra and whoever else. Were they paid by the company WWE, and then you had to still pay them as well?
I think they were to an extent. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure, but they were at every TV, so they traveled. So the company obviously probably paid travel, hotel, rental car. I don't know. I don't know if Hunter, Taker, especially when Hunter was really figured into the office, if it was just something the office paid for or they just did it as a courtesy. I'm not sure. I just knew I had to pay. I was happy to pay. They did great work for the most part, and it was fine. It was just a matter sometimes of getting them done. And I had to really like map out the next year. I have 5 pairs. If I put an order in 5 months from now, I wear 1 set per month and try to maybe turn it over on eBay or a fan wants to buy them, whatever it might be. Never really did that part of it, but I always had myself on a schedule that, okay, in month 5, ask for it. Then if it takes 2 months, I can recycle and go back to month 1 of the gear and do it that way. So I was never figured in. I mean, people probably know that. It's a recurring thing. Take a drink, future episode, and I never got figured in. So in TNA, they made stuff and it was kind of okay. WWE, I think, took a lot of pride in at least making everybody look good to a certain extent. I think there was a lot more, there wasn't less professionalism in TNA, but maybe because there was 100 wrestlers and they dealt with indies, because the people at WWE really didn't deal with a whole lot of people on the indies. The seamstresses that worked at TNA at the time, they were also doing independent wrestlers as far as gear. So I think their workload was a lot. So sometimes quality suffered a little bit, especially for me because I wasn't figured in. So Dr. Stevie was the best because I just went to a place, had bought scrubs, had the monogram or the calligraphy or the inscription, and I was done.
You said that you bought several at the same time. Are you saying bulk of the same design when you mean that?
Usually, yeah. Like, here's a little fun fact, and I got away with it. If you look at the new ECW TV matches and you say, that font looks familiar, that symbol on the front of the shorts looks familiar too. The font of Stevie Richards was Guitar Hero. And on the front, it was the Borg logo sideways.
Okay, we're going to have to, I don't know what the Borg logo is.
It's like a...
I'm not a trekker.
It's kind of like looks like an eagle closed up type thing with an eye in the middle.
So absolutely no. So all right then. So you hopefully you could be getting WWE in some sort of like trademark dispute now.
No, I had asked him about that. I really did. I wore them a couple of times, but then I said, I didn't even say what it was. I go, do you think I can get in trouble for that? And they go, we don't care. It's you.
So that's fair. Well, it'd be the company that'd be getting in trouble. You also said that you had to buy them. What was the price of a consignment of trunks or single set of trunks?
Kick pads would range depending upon, I didn't get design, just different colors to match the trunks, or you don't like the trunks, the shorts. Went back to the shorts quickly. If the design was brand new, there'd be a little charge that I'd be happy to pay. And I would say, how much for the design? These people draw these things up, they stencil them, they do a lot. The prep work to do it is immense. Plus the creativity, you got to be an artist to be able to do that. There'd be the design maybe, unless I was buying 5 or 6 at a time, maybe they waived the design fee. The shorts would be anywhere from 50 to 80, maybe. Now, if I wanted two-tone or something, different materials, but it was always like one color, maybe with a different color waistband. The kick pads would probably be maybe $40 to $60 to kind of put the covers on. Or sometimes I would say, I have kick pads, I bought a bunch of pairs, can you put covers on them? But they wouldn't include the kick pad in the price. But to me, it's like, it's a write-off, which doesn't mean a full tax credit. We should get into a tax episode about wrestlers, but you can write it down, future episode. But for me also, it was an investment. And I didn't want to look like he doesn't care and it's not a new look. Now, did it make a difference? Probably not in my career, but...
well, it did though. It did though, because not to spoil a future episode, wink, but
they made it action figures.
Exactly, because they told you make as many different designs as possible and we'll make more figures of you. Great
catch, because that reminds me, why I started making different sites? Because Pete told me to. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't so much the company telling me you need to freshen up your look. It was this guy saying, we're going to make some action figures, so get more gear.
On that front, one more thing. Which design in the WWE era did you like the best? I think the most distinctive was the pink ones with Victoria's eyes on the back. I think that's, for me anyway, I imagine that's for me your best design.
Well, what I would have done was I would have mixed the black pair that I had with Stevie Night Heat, that logo, they got it down to a T. The Stevie Night Heat logo, forget who did it. I think it was Sandra. She did an amazing job with that. If I could put that on the pink tights and more of that, I liked the first tights that came out, Stevie Night Heat, where it was just in kind of like a shiny silver. It was just plain text, but it was to introduce that I was the general manager of Stevie Night Heat. Those will probably, from a storyline and a gimmick and a creative fulfillment perspective, those tights have a special place in my heart. Also, Crash had made a pair of Stevie Corp tights that he wore all the time in TNA and then wore a little bit in WWE. I wore those a few times. Those have great sentimental value to me. We saw them in our Hope chest, and actually I'm going to give them to his daughter next time I see. She's going to visit Florida, and we're going to go out, me, her, Donovan Morgan. I'm going to give her those tights then. I may have already given them. My God, CT. If I haven't given them to her already, I'm going to give them to her this time.
Well, it either is or was a nice sentiment.
Thank you very much.
Depending on whether you've given them or not. Now, we're going to move on to some other people who may have interesting stories regarding some of the gear that they wore. And the first one was one that you told me, and I can't remember if we said it on a previous episode, instead of a future episode, previous episode, finally. Bubba Ray Dudley had something interesting that he did with his gear.
Well, it wasn't interesting. It was just, that was Bubba's gear. Bubba and Bully wore a T-shirt, and Bully wore a vest over the T-shirt. I believe Bubba even wore a vest over the T-shirt when we worked, like one of my favorite matches ever on Raw, where we went at each other in that match. It was rough, but it was great to be able to have that physical match with him. But Bubba, it was a locker room thing. I personally didn't care, but a lot of the boys were mad because Bubba threw some heavy-handed overhand chops. They were there. But he wore the shirt, he wore the vest, he might have wore like spandex under the shirt, like a singlet. So you're talking about 3 layers minimum that you have to chop. Sometimes made a thud sound, but really didn't penetrate and make any kind of slapping sound, and obviously didn't leave much of a mark where you're bare-chested and he's lighting you up. I didn't mind because I'm a heel, so my chops I have to be as effective as him. But you can imagine, we talked about it last episode, the locker room, the rumblings, and Bubba's personality already was very polarizing to a point. That's why it was great when he became Bully Ray. And I give him credit for that, because Bully Ray, man, you talk about taking the thing like it's a little bit of a side note here. Him and Elon, the Dudley boys, they can't use the name. They go to TNA. They become Team 3D. Essentially the same thing, but still have 3D in it. Still can use the Dudley Death Drop and all the Dudley, the 3D. Okay. Then Bubba reinvents himself as Bully Ray. He's taking all the stuff from WWE that usually, like, think about it. It's the Rated R superstar, Adam Copeland. What? Mm-hmm. But you can say, oh, Team 3D is the Dudley boys. Bully Ray used to be Bubby Ray. Bubby used to be a Jewish grandmom.
Bubby. To say Bubba.
Hey, we're over 2 hours into Philly accent and the mispronunciations are in full effect. But I give him credit. But then, you know how the boys are. You're in a locker room. This guy's chopping people and he wears a shirt. Obviously, people are going to look sideways at it. And then Bubba, obviously, is very much for standing up for his own business and being an alpha male when it comes to the creative process. You're going to rub people the wrong way. I didn't care. Dude, I'll say it again. For me, if I was a babyface, I'm trying to out-chop them, I'd be like, well, this is bullshit. We're not going to chop them because I can't outshine you during this with this particular thing. That's splitting hairs. You can do something else. But as a heel, I didn't care. And then it would be, okay, well, I can lay in the chops, and if I could at least get a thud, I don't care if I leave a mark or not.
We have to finish off this show 2 smartboard segments, What Went Wrong, this time. I picked one, historical, and you picked one from WWE Raw this past Monday. What did you see that went wrong? And tell us all about it.
here we have Seth Rollins. He looks like he's running like I run here, but we have Seth Rollins running up. Now, what we're going to focus on here, this is something we're talking about, the future pro wrestlers, the basics, the foundations. These punches are absolutely terrible for somebody at this level and at this place on the card. So I'm just going to kind of move it up. Now, this is Bronson Reed. I like the environment here of outside the arena, of brawling, of doing something outside of the ring. But you run the risk of making things look like crap. And that's exactly what happens here. So here he is approaching Bronson Reed. And you're going to see right away, James and everybody, the first, he's going to kind of splash him. Look at these punches. Look at the punches. They're awful. These punches are awful. They're like Tony or David Crockett used to say, but this is the negative way. Look at him, Tony. Look at him. But don't look. They're the crappiest punches you'll ever see. And
what's he doing wrong then? Because, I mean, I see crappy punches all the time. So what's wrong? What's he doing wrong?
He's doing what Kevin Nash calls egg beaters. In other words, you misinterpret viciousness and aggression with hitting somebody more. Hitting somebody more. You've seen those punches that are just like, what's next? What's next? What's next? You're not focusing on that. In other words, he would have been good to do the standard duck Bronson Reed's clothesline and then just start lighting them up. 1, 2, you know what I mean? Like, take each punch. He's seven steps ahead in his mind about where they got to be on the car, where they got to be in the truck, he's thinking of the spots instead of just fighting and getting to the spot. So that's why it's just awful. I just think you don't want to hurt anybody, but like the bear hug, in a way, Bronson Reed's wrong too, because you're not giving him any kind of space to really reach back and get the range. So, and he's selling it. This monster's selling it, which, by the way, speaking of selling, we're going to get to the next part of this. The whole segment was wrong. It was definitely what went wrong. And I'm going to tell you why and what I would do as a talent after this. So we have this right here. He picks him up. And this here is fine. Just grab him in a front face lock and try to like hockey punch him, you know? But these little egg beaters are just crap. Now, this right here, oh, he threw the guy in the railing. All right, so right here, what we have, and what I'm going to do is back up because we can zoom in, which I didn't do. I'm going to zoom in, and you're going to see the punches. They're not even touching them. You see that? Mm-hmm. It's just terrible. It's awful for somebody on this level, this place on the card, getting paid that much money. It's no excuse. All right, so here we have Kerb Stomp. Kerb Stomp onto a car hood. And I want to ask you, did you watch Raw?
I watched bits of it. I've not seen this bit.
Okay. Now, the Kerb Stomp is Seth Rollins' finish, correct? For the most part?
Mm-hmm.
So when he stomps somebody, he pins them. They don't get up.
No, they do not get up.
Okay. Kerb Stomp pins somebody. They don't get up. Sometimes they don't get up for 10, 20, 30 seconds, right? And they're not fresh as a daisy and firing up afterwards. Pretty safe assumption, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you assume, though, James?
Right. So you would say it makes an ass out of you and me. When I was at college, they used to say, assuming is the mother of all f***ups.
Yeah. Edit that out, Chris. Lots of curse-heavy words here. This was the mother of F-ups in the other sense, because you and I assume he should sell this. A Kerb Stomp onto a car hood, which looks great. Look at it. Slow-mo. Looks great. Boom. And he ate it. He put his head right into that. What do you think will happen after this? Is this the end of the segment?
He'll be taken to a local medical facility. He might be out for 3 weeks.
I might be taken to a local medical facility if I have to watch this clip again. So, no, I'm going to show you what happens. Seth Rollins is looking at the camera, talking like this. I'm going to go in slow-mo. Look off to your left. Right here. Look at what's going on. You just got curb stomped into a car hood. Dare I say, from basically the top rope. If you think about it, right? Mm-hmm. And he's stronger than ever before. And ready. He's ready. It was the curb stomp that heals. It was a 5-hour energy curb stomp. I can't even say it. So, good Lord. What do you think about that? Watching it for the first time over and over again.
How many seconds were there between curb stomp and recovery? I know you cut out the middle bit, but how many seconds were there in real time?
10, 15 seconds of him looking in the camera, cutting a promo. You saw when he was getting off the hood and he went right to the camera. Mm-hmm. I don't care if it's 20, 30 seconds. You didn't get curb stomped into a wrestling mat, which is still getting curb stomped. That's a piece of metal, and he's 3 feet above him with all the momentum.
When you said egg beaters as punches, I was looking at Seth Rollins when he was punching to the body to Bronson Reed, and he was punching him with his fist closed, but he was punching with the palm like that. Is that generally a pro wrestling thing, or would you be discouraged from doing that because it looks fake?
Well, no. I mean, when you're doing the kind of the palm strike shot to the stomach is usually when you got somebody in a corner and you go to the side and you hit them dead in the stomach. And it's like Jerry Lawler would do that, where he would make that noise of hitting. It doesn't hurt, but it's there. That makes sense. I like that a lot more because at least he slowed the cadence down to the stomach. But these here, dude, he literally just tapped him on the shoulder. He said, "Hey, I'm here." It's like tapping somebody, but not from behind. Egg beaters is the Kevin Nash reference to that. That's what it looks like, an egg beater, like this.
There's one more thing I noticed. I know we're not playing it in full speed because, YouTube and Content ID and that kind of thing. If you want things played regular speed, you have to go to the Patreon. Stevie Richards' Patreon that I encourage you all to go to. There's something that I've noticed, and I always see it more in, the 10 punches to the corner thing, is that obviously it can be a wide chasm of difference between how well they look or how terrible they look, but a lot of cadence as punches is that the fist comes back quicker than when it goes down to the head. Is that something that's quite common in wrestling? Is basically you try and make motion or make something look more impactful by actually bringing your arm back quicker than bringing it to the head. Well,
the punch, I said it before, the punch is the range. The punch actually starts here. Say you're on the person there. The more you rear back, the more, leniency you have or margin of error, especially if the person has long hair. The more margin of error you have to miss. But think about it. Seth Rollins' punches are like this. He's not rearing back. When he started rearing back to the stomach, they looked a little bit more real. When you're like this, there's nothing you can do. I'd rather like I said, duck, range, punch. And 3 good ones before he gets cut off. That's, in my estimate, this whole thing, what this does, it kind of hurts Bronson Reed a little bit with the punches. This segment hurts Seth Rollins almost 100% more than Bronson Reed. Number one, your punches look like crap. Number two, you prostituted and pretty much sacrificed your finish, which was even more devastating, on a car hood with you above your opponent. So if it was me looking at this as a worker, you better hit me with 5 of these to pin me, which further prostitutes your finish more. But I would say if this guy fires up, then why don't I at least kick out on 2? It's not as hard of a bump as the car. These are just things I can see people not telling him, but pushing back on the agent, on the writer. Triple H said, why should I sell this? Now, he's politically favored. He's Triple H's boy. So I don't know if anybody's ready. He could have a little creative liberty, pal, as Vince would say, that people aren't going to step up and say, I can't sell that. But I guarantee you during the Austin, The Rock, Taker days, they'd be like, I don't want to work with him. I'm not selling that finish.
There's one more thing, and I've seen this in brawls before in wrestling, where someone's got them in a bear hug. As you say, Seth Rollins is doing these very weak-looking rabbit punches with the inside of the palm, basically, with his fist closed. I've seen I think it's like more old-school wrestling, territorial wrestling, when there's a sort of brawl going on and they want to create the illusion of violence and the illusion of motion, is when they're that close together, instead of doing rabbit punches, they will swing their arms. The person in the bear hug will swing their arms.
They're almost giving a forearm down onto them, trying to...
I was going to say even further on, a bicep, but the motion will be far more extreme. They'll be swinging their entire arm, and they'll either wrap the arm around the head and not hit them at all, or wrap their arm around the back, so it feels more uncontrollable. Uncontrolled and wild brawl. The
way this would have worked a little bit better is if Bronson Reed, like I said, either did the old swing and punch, which I hate, the duck punch, thing, as the guy's running at you. But if Seth, pretty much, front face locked him and then took him down a little bit, got on top of him and started hitting him there, Bronson Reed pushes him off, tries to get away, Seth charges him, then he does the slam onto the hood, then that weird one on the box made no sense except to put Seth up there to do the stomp. So it didn't make any sense. Now he kicked him with the heel of his boot pretty hard. So there's not even a consistent, there's weak and rough in here. It's not consistent. So the whole thing with this segment, I like the environment. Love the environment. Loving introducing a car that they obviously are ribbing somebody. If this was Samantha Irvin before she left, I would say that's her rental car. That somebody got ribbed with that, obviously. But it's all wrong. And it hurts Seth so much more than it hurt Bronson Reed. On the other end, like I said, he's Triple H's boy. Who are you going to blame a bad segment on? Not Seth. Can't tell him anything.
In the words of Lillian Garcia, he's a future #1 container.
Did you really say that?
Yes, she meant contender. And she sort of calls herself #1 container match. So anyway,
I want her to start introducing people like she used to sometimes, where the people weren't sure if they were coming out. It was and making their way to the ring. Stevie Richards?
Did she do that?
Not me, someone else.
Go on, who did she do it to?
Oh, it might have been Albert. I'm not sure. It might have been Tensai or whatever. Or maybe she just didn't know how to pronounce it. It was somebody. She's a great person, man, after I said all that. But next, she is. I hope she is getting $1 million a year to be a ring announcer. That would be amazing.
Hey. Yeah. And funnily enough, she left to be a singer.
See, there's a precedent.
Right, the last feature of this show before we shut it down for a week, only a week, is the one that I picked. I decided we were going to do a historical what went wrong. Before then, you came to me and said, oh, actually, there's a new one that we can talk about. You can talk about. And we're going to be talking about Yokozuna. Now, I've actually talked about this on Dutch's show. We watched a video of Yokozuna landing in the Bonzai drop, and it very much goes on the status of the wrestler you were. If you were a star, he would give you the Bonzai drop. Very different to if you weren't a star. So in that respect, take it away once again, Stevie. And we're going to do something special. We're going to do side by side on this one, the whole bit.
We are going to do side by side. I'm taking every bit of advantage from this cool app that I have. By the way, also the new Playbook app that my buddy who developed this Coach Lens app added professional wrestling rings to the Playbook. So when we talk about ring positioning, we now can do a smartboard segment on ring positioning as well. So thank you very much for adding that. But yes, this is where we're going to be able to compare it. Now, just to let everybody know, It did depend. Back then, especially. These are the days where I was friends with people like Ace Darling, Crowbar, other people that would go up and do these things. Even Tony DeVito, Mike Bell. This was the era of these guys. There was a core group of guys, and it expanded over time, that they would go up there. And it was pretty scary because they knew they were kind of crash test dummies or disposable human beings in these enhancement matches, which were definitely squash matches. No offense from these people in these matches. But regarding the finish, none of these guys ever got taken care of to a degree, to any degree, really, with that, because this was the time for the WWF at the time, Superstar, to shine, show aggression, and didn't really take care of these kids in the ring. Was it a rule handed down by the office? I'm not quite sure, but nobody ever balked at it, There was definitely some scary incidents where this happened, especially with the Bonzai drop. So as we get into this, we're going to play the compilation video that you sent, James, of basically Yokozuna doing it to people and not holding the ropes, not even like landing on his feet, kicking his feet out. So let's go right here. All right, so here's the compilation that James sent me, which basically was the enhancement talents really not being taken care of. In this first one that I watched, he actually, out of all of them, took the best care for this guy. So he must have liked him, knew him. Maybe the family knew him. Maybe went to one of the Samoans wrestling schools. I'm just speculating. But he, out of all of them, this was the safest one that I can see. And actually, we're going to zoom in right here. And I want to show you his feet and his hands because he literally almost rolls his own ankle here doing this. So let's play it as he comes down. Boom. So you can see he's still holding onto the ropes. He lands on his feet first, but right here, he bounces. I mean, he's still on the guy's throat. I mean, how would you like to be there, James? Right.
There's more than one person that was. Yeah, there's more than one person that was injured from these. But the thing is I'll say this now: is the best I know is that enhancement talent were very much discouraged from complaining about their injuries because that means they may not be brought back.
Oh,
but
yeah.
but one enhancement was really hurt.
I think it's the guy we're talking about off before the show that I trained with over in Jersey at Mike Sharp's, because that was the one that was on the opening of Raw. That was the roughest one I've ever seen. He literally just kicked his feet, hands out, and came down from the second rope. So let's go to the next one here. Obviously, that's the pinfall. Here he is up here. And I'm going to look right here. There, let's play it. There, that's the part I want to zoom in on. So here it is, him coming down. Oh, man. I want to zoom out a little bit on that one. Good Lord. Oh, my God. Zoomed in, it looks a lot worse. That is, he held the ropes, but his feet, see how his feet kick out? Right here, they're coming down, and then you'll see them kick out. They slide. They go in that direction and just slide. That is not even on his chest. My goodness.
Is this the guy who you thought was mouthing off backstage?
This is not the guy. This is not the guy. All right, let's zoom in here.
Do we have a clip of that guy getting squashed, or do you want to tell that story now?
I don't know the whole story. I just know he was not a cool guy. And I can assume he carried that attitude up there. And I'll see if I can see on the close-up, if it's that dude, I'll say who it was and tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good Lord. Now, he landed high on that, but you see how he splits his legs? But I think he still kind of held onto the rope. Yeah, he was still holding the rope to the side right there. But there's a couple where he doesn't hold the rope at all. Let's go up here. Zoom in.
Oh.
This dude knows it's coming. Look, he's on his heels, literally, and it's coming. I'm almost afraid to hit play. Oh my God. Let's bring it out a little bit here. Back it up. He let go with one hand. My God, man. Now, the thing, too, this sets the stage and the foundation for when he takes care of the main roster talent, that the fans react. There is a psychology to doing it this way. Is it a safe one? Is it a courteous one? Not exactly. But when they're this rough, the psychology is they can take care, but the mental image of the fans is still on this set of dangerous Bonzai drops. So you got to think about that, of course, pinfall. This is Virgil.
This is Virgil. There's a reason I put this next. It's almost a transition from jobber to jobber of the stars, because I wanted to also bring this up, is that the positioning of the victim also dictates whether this is going to be a bad squash or not.
He's in like Macho Man elbow territory. He's not as close to the corner as most people are, right?
No, nowhere near.
Look at that.
All the stars knew, or Yokozuna knew, to drag them very close to the corner if he was going to protect them. Whereas the guy that we just saw get squashed, he was far out, and so is Virgil, surprisingly.
That's the furthest out I've seen anybody ever with this. So we're going to zoom in. But he still kind of took care of him.
Mm-hmm.
He held onto that rope. He landed flat on his feet. It's not as rough as I would have guessed. Do you see that right there? He lands right on his feet flat. So he kind of took care of him. One hand on the rope. One hand on the rope up there. Foot there. That's not as egregious. Now, Virgil was way out there, man. He's lucky Yoko grabbed the one rope. Now that's right there. That's the rough part. the little rocking of the boat. That could have been a rib right there. Just like, he might have been like, my left rib is hurting. Okay, there you are. There we go.
So we're into the stars portion now.
Okay. No, easy savage, right?
That's Coco Beware, that.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I saw the fancy checkerboard tights, but didn't see the person. Yeah, he took care of him. He literally is just doing a squat. He landed on his feet and then just sat on him. I mean, the dude's still 600 pounds. You're not going to be able to breathe. That's a pretty good one right there. Which one is this? Oh, Brett. Yeah, of course. And right there. Do you see that? Look at that.
Brett actually brings his body up as well.
Brett still did that. Brett's like, I'm not taking any chances. Hey, you see, imagine laying there, looking up and seeing the mass of humanity above you and not knowing, like, is he going to take care of, or if you're an enhancement talent, knowing he's not going to take care of you. You know it's coming and nothing. Can't complain. Just got to hope he doesn't break your sternum. That's all it is, or a rib. Yeah, but he took care of Brett. See, he's totally on his feet, and there's at least a second of just sitting on him. And if you didn't have those dangerous Bonzai drops, I think the fans would crap all over this type, right? If they didn't see the really, really heavy ones. And maybe that is the psychology or the edict that when it's an enhancement match, we got to make it look borderline dangerous. Then we have them conditioned to know this, or at least believe this move is dangerous. Even though in this case, it's much safer. Oh, Typhoon. I got to look back at this match, because this on paper, just like the Big Show and who'd you say, Big Show Kane? Like, I'd like to see these two work. No, you said Big Show Kane you said Big Show Kane was a disappointment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought you meant the Big Show Carly backstage fight. Yeah.
All right, so let's take a look.
But I believe this might be post Shotmaster Typhoon when he came back briefly.
I think so. Yeah, he totally took care of him. The point is, he holds onto the ropes. He literally just stands up right there. Feet are flat, hands are there, and he just sits. Now, if he did this, I'm just saying, I feel bad for the guys that took this move and got hurt, no matter what their attitude was. But dare I say it, if he had done this to an enhancement talent, the fans would have crapped on it. It's a very, very weird situation. So there he is, pinning him there. And who's this?
Hulk Hogan.
Now, I heard they stretchered Hogan out after this, and he couldn't walk, and he told, no, that's a different story. But I believe it. Yeah, he definitely was taking care of the golden goose, as Taker called it, right? Definitely, definitely. Okay, so now we've done that. Let's do this. Let's do fancy side by side. We're at the same point. We're going to slow-mo and play them both at the same time. Watch. Totally different. Totally different. Now, this one on Duggan kind of reminds me of the one that he gave to the first guy. I skipped to the second one. The first one was a little heavy on Duggan. It wasn't quite the same. So we'll move ahead here. He gave Duggan 4 of these. So let's go to this one. He started to get progressively safer to each one. So let's do this from there. And now. Boom. That's just a little example of how, like we said before, the culture in WWE back at that time, and I knew, like I was friends with Ace Darling, like I said, Crowbar. There was a couple other independent workers that I was friends with. And even the ones I wasn't friends with, like the guy I talked about at Mike Sharp's wrestling school, and they would come back from Raw tapings or whatever they would do, usually just a Raw taping. They would tape like 2-3 shows at a time. And they looked like they'd been in a UFC fight. And they were limping, or they were still like, looked like they were crying, like in a way like, my God, what did I do wrong? They thought they had heat. There was a gambit of negative emotions. They were traumatized. So like when I saw that, because I was half tempted, maybe I go, but also knew, just like ECW, I don't have the look. I can't work. I don't know anything about this business. I'm not smart enough to anything. If I go up there, I'm going to get eaten alive. I probably would have never went to WWE if I went there, because I would have screwed up bad. But when I saw them, it was almost like a cautionary tale of, ooh. And they were like, oh, we got paid and we got to do this, and they want us back and everything. And then there was one dude just quiet, had his ego checked big time, but he still stayed the same dude. So it did. After a while, when the bruises wore off and the ribs healed, he became the same guy he always was. But it was kind of like, man, I like I always say, you believe what you want to believe. That was a sign. You're not ready for any of this. You need to stay right where you're at. And thank God. Because you're a young wrestler, and you're getting paid back then probably, what, 100, 150, 200 bucks to go up there and be on TV. And you will get booked on the indies. People understood, you're an enhancement guy, but I can book you on the indies. It was incredibly tempting. But when I saw that, I was like, no thanks, not interested right now.
Did you ever have an offer or an opportunity to do some enhancement talent?
Never.
For WWF?
Never. No, never. It was usually, they knew somebody. I think it was like Tony DeVito, Mike Bell. They were Northeast guys. So they probably worked indies on Jersey and New York, met up. Tony and Mike gave their name to whoever. It might have been Gurria. Hey, smartass. Oh my God, I think I've been Bonzai dropped. Let me take a drink. Future episode, take a drink.
Well, while you drinking and clear your esophagus, I'm going to say something. Yokozuna, that was some real bullshit there, because he quite clearly could have protected. He was protecting the stars, maybe even a bit too much at times. You know, Hulk Hogan, especially the Golden Goose. But some of the enhancement guys, man, he was crushing them. I mean, there was one that I couldn't find the video of, where he was as far away as Virgil and doesn't hold on to the ropes at all and just kills the guy. And someone wrote to me some time ago when we did, I don't know if it was a comment on YouTube or an email or whatever, that they said, I knew the guy in the video that Dutch and I watched and reviewed. And as I mentioned before, he never complained about it to WWF in case it affected future bookings. But he said he was really hurt. He had broken ribs. He was hurt for a long time. And I sort of look at that as like, as you have said before, you know, your value as a human is dictated by how much of a push you're getting. So these people who are coming in, putting their life on the line, are pond scum to the WWF guys at the time or whoever. And it's, you know, it's a really, really terrible way of looking at it, but it seems to be true at the time. I mean, some of these people are getting badly hurt for $200 or whatever it is.
Yeah, I see. What I'm doing is I'm not trying to play a gatekeeper or have the Agent Smith effect of protecting the WWE way of doing things back then. I'm happier than anybody that it's changed. And also, I'm very, very upset and sad for the guys that had to go through that. There's no reason for it. Even Razor Ramon would do the Razor's Edge, and you saw it. He would do it to certain enhancement guys and fold them and drop them on their head. He had two different ways of doing it, admittedly, two different ways of doing it, and I don't agree with that at all. I believe across the board, as I've always said, it's hard enough as it is, and it's definitely hard for an independent wrestler just looking for somebody to see that they can do something for a potential job, maybe not today or tomorrow, but in the future. I totally agree with you. Me as a person, me as a human being, says it's bullshit. But in all honesty, the pro wrestler comes out sometimes and tries to rationalize it. Maybe rationalize it to myself because all I'm going to do is get upset, sad, and angry about it, and I can't do a damn thing about it. All I can do is speak about it here. And yeah, Yokozuna, from what I knew, was a pretty easygoing, very jovial guy, pretty easy to get along with across the board. This is just what I understand. But also at the same time, that environment is toxic, poisonous, and can bring the worst out of anybody there. And that's what happened. And yeah, also Perry Saturn talked about it. Did you interview him? You interviewed him at WrestleMania weekend. He talked about how they made him dress in a closet when he was an enhancement talent. They wouldn't let him dress in the dress. He had to dress in a closet. And he never forgot that. And Perry became a star. So that's the whole thing too. If you're in the least little bit political, you're going to treat everybody the same or treat everybody with the same courtesy and respect, or at least give everybody the benefit of the doubt, because there could come a day, if you look at it in selfish terms, like wrestlers, the only way to get through to a wrestler, why not treat that person you don't have any idea who they are? Treat them good, treat them well, and they might be your boss one day. They might be a main eventer, and you might be looking for a job. Nobody thinks that way. You're going up, you're going to see everybody on the way down, too.
I don't know if it was Lanny Poffo or Just Incredible. It's one of the very first interviews I did, and I said, my question was, who were the guys who would take care of you if you were basically pegged as enhancement talent, and who would treat you as a crash test dummy to get themselves over? I can't remember if Lanny Poffo said the Big Boss Man absolutely killed him once in a match. I don't know, but it's been so long since I did the interviews, I can't remember if I said the name. So if you're interested in further stories of who would take care of you and who wouldn't, then I think there's quite a few on WSI. But on that basis, we have been recording, some of it will be cut out, obviously. On that basis, this might be our longest show ever. There's got to be at least 2:45 of show here for you all to enjoy. So quite a lot of time investment, but hopefully well worth it. I'm sure you will agree. I was going to do the outro. Do you want to say something, Stevie, before
Yeah, I do. We're trying to figure out for all the Patreon members. We did secure the rights to John Worthy, Never Lie to You. We're going to bring that back. As a matter of fact, John wants to perform the song. Say it on a
future episode.
He offered that, so we may have a performance from John Worthy here. Never Lie to You, as the Patreon text of our members is scrolling. We appreciate all the people at patreon.com/Stevie Richards. And we are definitely bringing exclusive content, including show notes, pre and post show. And of course, what we're trying to figure out concerning the Patreon there may be a ticker. A couple people were left off, so I'm sorry about that. The ticker only has so many characters, so we're probably going to have this play on the way out with the scrolling text after we go and James takes us out. He has 2 books, one on Owen Hart, one on The Rock. Third one people ask about, but I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah, there we go. Third one, third book, second channel might be working together on. Throwing it out in the universe. But that's about it. We appreciate everybody out there. James, take us out.
We've pretty much done it all now. So, okay, we will see you next Friday as the ticker scrolls under me and under Stevie.
No, it's scrolling after the episode. We got a lot of Patreon members. They're great.
Well, that's the spirit then. All right then, well, on that basis, we'll catch you again next Friday on all podcast platforms. Yes, I know what went wrong doesn't really work for the audio version, but it's good enough to talk for it. But until then, we will see you on the YouTube channel every single day for clips and every single Friday with a brand new episode. We will see you again next Friday. Goodbye.